The manhwa starts with Director Lee telling our main character, Yeonwoo, that he's pretty sure he called her about 30 minutes ago. But Yeonwoo, sadly, tells him she was busy eating lunch, so she couldn't check her messages right away. Now, here's the twist, she's actually lying. She read his messages like an hour ago. And get this, she knew he just got back from Dubai after being away for like 40 days. And guess what? He came straight to his office from the Incheon airport. For like the last 2 days, he's been shooting her his schedule in these short texts. He's not the type to go on, just a few words at a time. But here's the thing, she's so tuned in, she can totally figure out what he's getting at just from the little preview she gets in her messages. And even though he's not mentioning anything about them spending the night together in those texts, she knows deep down that's why he's bothering with the whole schedule thing in the first place. The reason for all this drama is that they've been sneaking around and hooking up in all sorts of places, the office, his car, even her place. She was thinking of avoiding him, just to stand her ground a bit, but then bam. He hits her up with a message earlier, crushing her little rebellion. This guy, he's the type who can pull off anything he sets his mind to, especially when he's acting all cool in front of her colleagues. And just when she's lost in her thoughts, Lee snaps her right back to reality. He casually asks her about lunch, and she nods, claiming it was good. But he sees through her facade, noting she only meets his gaze when she's not telling the truth. There's a tension between them, a desire for more, and she wonders how much longer she can keep this up. Despite the complexities, they've held on, unable to let each other go. Yet, in their encounters, desire is the only emotion that truly lingers. Then, in a bold move, he pulls her close, initiating a passionate kiss that catches her off guard. Their relationship is like that, complicated and intense. Lee takes on the role of teacher, showing her the ropes of kissing and urging her to be more convincing if she's going to play the part. He's not one to wait around. He mentions waiting for 40 days, implying he's eager for more. Lee comes off as the type who needs to have wild intimacy multiple times a week to feel satisfied. It's all about passion and fulfillment for him. Yeonwoo mentions his secretary's waiting outside, but he couldn't care less. He boldly declares that he's with his woman at the moment. Yep, Yeonwoo is his secret lady, his partner in, well, But truth be told, they are total opposites. He's this big-shot heir to a corporation, while she's just a lonely orphan. It's like they are from different worlds. And because of that, the end to this one-sided relationship seems pretty much set in stone. She's wondering how much longer she has to keep up this relationship. Then Lee gives her a new stocking, saying he doesn't want other guys catching a glimpse of her bare skin. She promises to switch them out for different ones. She quickly zips up her skirt, and Lee drops a bomb, saying a quick romp in the office isn't cutting it for him anymore. He gently strokes her face and mentions swinging by her place later. But she's not feeling it and tells him she'd rather he didn't come over anymore. So, he suggests they grab dinner at a hotel instead. Yeonwoo's worried about gossip starting if they are seen out together like that. She suggests going to his place instead, but he insists on sending a driver, which she turns down. While in the bathroom, an employee pops in and asks Yeonwoo if her stomach is feeling better now. She mentions she picked up some medicine from the convenience store on her way back. Yeonwoo assures her that she's fine now, mentioning she already got some meds from the office. But the lady insists she should still take it, just to be safe. Then she reminds Yeonwoo about their meeting starting for PR Team 2. In this meeting for Team 2, one of the staff pipes up and asks if anyone heard what went down when Director Lee showed up at the office today. Apparently, word on the street is he just got back from Dubai, all successful and whatnot, and headed straight to the office. One of the staff is straight up questioning the manager, asking how he plans to navigate office politics if he's always in the dark. She heard the whole board of directors ditched lunch just to welcome Director Lee back in the lobby. And get this, even the manager of PR Team 1, Sung, was in on it. It's like a full-on party for Director Lee. Rumor has it, he's getting promoted to vice president thanks to that Dubai project. Things are moving crazy fast, huh? Meanwhile, the heir of Seokheon Construction is still just chilling as a regular employee. It's kinda weird, right? But then again, Director Lee is being groomed for a leadership role to replace the old president who's always causing chaos. So, there's gotta be a good reason why the chairman picked Director Lee over all his other grandkids. Right as they are gearing up for the meeting, this guy on the team throws a curveball and asks manager Jung about a juicy rumor. Apparently, someone on the general affairs team is dating their boss. Yeonwoo's caught off guard, and the lady staff chimes in, saying that rumors been floating around for a while now. It's tricky, though, 'cause they can't really tell just by watching them. They probably had to sneak around to meet up, or else people would start gossiping about favoritism and all that jazz. But who knows if the boss actually pulled any strings with HR. Yeonwoo's thinking to herself that both the employee and boss already denied those rumors, and manager Jung should know that too. She gets this chill down her spine as she hears the staff gossiping about someone on their team possibly having a secret fling with their boss. And just as she suspected, that lady staff member did catch them together before. As Yeonwoo is holding a document, the lady suggests she take it instead since she's not feeling great today. She looks kinda pale, poor thing. Yeonwoo hands over the document, and then the lady sighs, saying she wishes she was as pretty as Yeonwoo. So, while the lady is chatting with another staffer, and dropping hints about Yeonwoo, Director Lee strolls in. He walks by them and sneakily brushes Yeonwoo's hand with his own. But, the nosy staffer catches it all. Meanwhile, manager Jung Mi-hyun, who used to be a screenwriter, is like the ultimate gossip guru in the company. She knows all the juicy deets. The busybody staffer is spilling the tea to the other lady, claiming that the construction company heir everyone's been gossiping about getting hitched soon is actually Director Lee. The other lady isn't so sure, but the busybody staffer argues her case. She's like, why else would he have Cartier make a pair of rings? It's not like he's gonna rock two identical rings, right? It's gotta mean he's tying the knot soon. Later that day, Yeonwoo heads over to Lee's place. He answers the door and asks if she's had dinner yet. Then, he pulls out this fancy wine he got as a gift in Dubai and pours them both a glass. As they munch and sip, he starts venting about some jerks who went back on their word even after signing some award letter. Yeonwoo chimes in, saying she heard he worked super hard on that project. But he brushes it off, saying it's just part of the job. Then, out of the corner of her eye, Yeonwoo spots a jewelry ring box in his hand, and all those office rumors come flooding back. She inquires about the ring, asking if it's meant for her. He casually responds, who else would it be for? Then, she mentions the tabloid rumors, and he dismisses them, clarifying he hasn't even proposed yet. When she directly asks if she's the one he plans to propose to, he confidently affirms, yes, you. Yeonwoo jumps up, raising her voice, asking if he really thinks it's a good idea for them to tie the knot. She points out that aside from their physical attraction, what else about them is compatible? Their families, backgrounds, and even their wealth couldn't be more different. They are like polar opposites in society. It's like they are from different planets. Lee grabs her bag and points out how they are always meeting up, yet she's suggesting he marry someone else. Yeonwoo's like, yeah, obviously. He questions if she even knows what she's talking about, and she confidently responds that she does, asking him to give her purse back. He asks if she's suggesting he should have an arranged marriage, but still keep her as a mistress, just like his dad did. Yeonwoo responds that she can't marry him, because she's witnessed the kind of life he's been living. Even though they are not blood-related, they should still treat each other like siblings. He sarcastically remarks that he must be a scumbag who sleeps with his sister then. She urges him to chill out and think logically. Getting married just isn't in the cards for them. But he grabs her from behind and points out they've been in this together for 2 whole years. Could she really just go off and meet someone else now? She responds that if she could turn back time, she'd go back to when he used to ignore and despise her. It would have been easier if she'd just hated him back. She regrets trying to impress him back when he was just a jerk. There's a reason why she always reached out to Director Lee the moment she left that house. Living together as siblings was suffocating. All she wanted was for them to become total strangers. It's like she's longing for a fresh start, away from all the tangled emotions. Release her. He's adamant and offers her the ring, but she's equally determined, saying she'd rather die than wear it. He persists, expressing that he only wants her and nobody else. It's a tense moment as they confront their FE. He slams the box shut and tosses it away, accidentally cutting his face in the process. She checks if he's all right, and he brushes it off, saying his face isn't the only thing hurting. She insists he gets it treated, announcing she's leaving. But he grabs her, pouring out his heart, saying he loves her. She thinks he's being absurd, but he's adamant, saying he can't imagine life without her. Then, without warning, he pulls her close and starts kissing her passionately. They've always had this kind of connection. He tells her he won't ask for anything more, so she should at least desire him for his body. He wants her to say that's what she wants. And before long, they are getting intimate. It's like they've always craved each other's touch. It feels like they've reached a point of no return. While Lee snoozes away, Yeonwoo takes a moment to watch him. Then, she gets up and heads for a shower. After she's all cleaned up, she checks out his wardrobe and spots clothes, shoes, and bags all for her. She wonders if he got all this new stuff, because she once mentioned that the last things he got were too pricey. She picks out a bag, figuring it shouldn't hurt to use it. At the office, Yeonwoo tells Youngmi that if she had known Youngmi would be there early, she would have grabbed a coffee for her too. Youngmi reassures her it's no big deal, explaining she showed up early because of a photo shoot for the golf course construction in Yangsan. She's almost done with it. After a quick chat about notebooks, Yeonwoo mentions that since they are always low on them and she forgot to write her name on hers, Youngmi can just take it. Youngmi wonders what Yeonwoo will use, and Yeonwoo casually drops the bomb that she actually handed in her resignation letter about a month ago. She figures it'll be processed soon. Youngmi's surprised, asking if Yeonwoo's really quitting. Yeonwoo nods, saying that's how things ended up. Youngmi admits she's ended up depending on Yeonwoo for a lot of stuff. Yeonwoo returns the sentiment, saying she's received plenty of help from Youngmi too. She thanks her for everything and suggests they split her coffee if Youngmi's in a rush. They haven't even started drinking it yet, so they both share the coffee, wrapping up their chat on a friendly note. Youngmi spots Yeonwoo's bag and compliments its quality, mentioning it looks like a knockoff Hermes. Yeonwoo shrugs, saying she's not sure, she just saw it on the street and thought it looked comfy, so she grabbed it. Youngmi asks her to remember where she got it and let her know, because even for a fake, it's a pretty nice bag. As Yeonwoo is carrying some files, her stomach starts to ache. She thinks to herself that it shouldn't be time for her period yet. She heads to the bathroom to take care of things. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, employees are gossiping about Yeonwoo buying a Hermes bag. They are wondering how she can afford it. Someone else mentions seeing Yeonwoo going to the director's office a few times too. They are saying Yeonwoo might not dress flashy, but sometimes she brings in pricey stuff. She figures as long as there aren't any logos or fancy decorations, people won't notice. Then, someone wonders why someone like Director Lee would be with Yeonwoo when he could be dating actresses. Another person chimes in, saying Yeonwoo seems kinda fragile looking, and to be honest, her looks aren't all that impressive. But they reckon there must be something else about her that's impressive. After the girls leave, Yeonwoo comes out, feeling kinda resigned. She figures this gossip was bound to happen sooner or later. But she knows it'll blow over soon anyway. That afternoon, the manager calls her to confirm her resignation. He mentions they'll have some new employees coming in tomorrow, so she should help with the transition. Once he's gone, she mutters to herself that her resignation should have been confirmed while Seokheon Lee was still away on his business trip. As Yeonwoo is about to close up, her landlord gives her a ring. He mentions her grandfather wants her to swing by today. Yeonwoo sighs, hoping her grandfather didn't spill anything to him yesterday. If he did, she's not letting it slide. But the landlord reassures her not to stress. He'll wait until she gives him the green light before he says anything. As she's walking, Yeonwoo realizes it'll take ages to get there by bus. Suddenly, Lee pulls up in his car and honks. Getting in, she mentions she planned to take the bus. He wonders why she's so grumpy today, and if work's been tough lately. He offers to transfer another employee to PR Team 2, or suggests she could quit altogether. Holding her hand, he admits he doesn't like seeing her working under other people. He brings up his marriage proposal, admitting it might have been a bit out of the blue. But he's cool with waiting until she's ready. They arrive at her grandfather's house, where a woman informs them he's waiting in the dining room. However, she gives Yeonwoo a suspicious glance as they enter. In the dining room, the grandfather welcomes them in, mentioning he received some giant yellowtail from Jeju Island. Seeing it reminded him of Yeonwoo. The woman adds that Yeonwoo should visit more often, maybe he's been feeling lonely. The grandfather talks about Yeonwoo a lot, expressing concern for her well-being while she's working. He also tells Lee to always look out for Yeonwoo like she's his little sister. Lee interjects, saying strictly speaking, Yeonwoo isn't his little sister. The grandfather shakes his head, commenting that Lee still hasn't grown up. He recalls a moment 8 years ago, when he brought Yeonwoo in and told Lee that she would be his little sister. He urged Lee to take good care of her, but Lee refused to accept her as his sister. Nowadays, the grandfather remarks that Yeonwoo has been living with them for so long that she might as well be his little sister. He wonders if they should have developed some sort of sibling bond by now, considering they've been through tough times together. Yeonwoo promises to visit him more often, but explains that she's still learning a lot at work and tends to pass out as soon as she gets home. After a quick chat about herbal medicine, they dig into their meal. Soon enough, the woman brings up to Lee that his grandfather has been bugging her to find him a good match. He's 32 now, so it's time for him to start thinking about settling down. The grandfather and the woman discuss how one of the potential matches won't work out. Lee asserts that he'll take care of his marriage arrangements himself. The grandfather then asks if he's currently seeing someone, to which Lee simply responds with a yes. Later that night, as Yeonwoo lies on her bed, she figures she'll have to stick around for breakfast since the grandfather was so insistent. Just then, she gets a message from Seokheon Lee, asking her to come meet him in his room. He's got something to show her. She heads over to meet him, and he pulls her onto the sofa, wrapping his arms around her from behind. They start chatting about orchids. Lee admits he's willing to go to this length just to see her smile. He envisions a future where they have children, and he wants them to witness her caring for the orchids. Yeonwoo remarks that he doesn't even enjoy being around children. Lee counters, asking if there's any man who could truly hate his own kids. He admits there is one, his father. Nevertheless, he plans to fill the newly expanded garden with orchids named after her. He kisses her gently and confesses that if she hadn't been in his life, he would have felt halfway to insanity by now. She disagrees, insisting he would have found a way to cope no matter what. But he's adamant, saying he's serious about not being able to live without her. He leans in for another kiss and guides her onto the bed. She hesitates, saying they shouldn't be doing this here, but he hushes her, reassuring her everything will be fine. And with that, they begin to intimately connect, caught up in the heat of the moment. Once they finish, she mentions she's going to catch some sleep because she's exhausted. He agrees, but refuses to let go of her hand. Then, he slips a ring onto her finger. She thinks to herself that he's trying to tie her down again like this. She figures she just needs to endure him for 2 more days, before she can finally make her getaway for good. Yeonwoo thinks to herself that it would have been easier if their relationship had just been casual, with no emotional attachments. As she heads to her room, the woman spots her and they both decide to have a chat. The woman expresses her certainty that Yeonwoo understands the importance of Seokheon's marriage. After his mother's suicide, she must have heard about the immense pressure Jeil Bank put on Miri Construction. No matter how stable a company appears, it's all in jeopardy the moment its financial stability is compromised. The woman explains that she set her sights on the daughter of Sungwon Bank for Seokheon's sake. She had a feeling something like this would happen ever since her father-in-law treated her like a daughter. It's common knowledge that those with nothing will do whatever it takes to get something. Sure, she might have had a tough time in the house too, but her life has been unbearable since Yeonwoo arrived. She's pleading with Yeonwoo to please stay out of her life and her son's lives. She passes over a check and states that she won't ask a second time. It's more than sufficient for Yeonwoo to relocate to a rural area and start her own business. It's a straightforward offer, suggesting a fresh start away from the current situation. The next morning, Grandfather Lee suggests they all have breakfast now that Yeonwoo is awake. The daughter-in-law inquires if Yeonwoo slept well, wondering if it was challenging to sleep in a different bed. Yeonwoo thinks to herself that the daughter-in-law looks completely different from last night. Reflecting on last night, the daughter-in-law asks Yeonwoo if she's using proper birth control. She emphasizes that clinging onto a man with a promising future while being careless with her body is truly unacceptable. Back in the present, as usual, Yeonwoo responds to the daughter-in-law in a way that doesn't truly reflect how she feels. As they all eat, Grandfather mentions that next year, once all the tax issues are sorted out, he plans to transfer some stocks to Yeonwoo's name. She insists he doesn't have to, but he insists that he does. He explains that after finally accepting her into the family, he's gained a lot of strength because of her. It's not like he doesn't have plenty to share, of course, he should be spreading his wealth among his children. As they continue eating, Yeonwoo thinks to herself that it'll all be over by tomorrow, she just has to hang in there until then. After breakfast, Grandfather mentions that he guesses the next time he'll see her will be on New Year's Day. She gives him a hug and reminds him to take care of himself. She tells him that no matter where she is, she's always thinking and worrying about him. At the office, Yeonwoo passes a note to one of the staff, telling her that if she ever needs to ask something, she can send her an email there. Yeonwoo talks with manager Jung about her departure. She doesn't want to give too many details, because she's afraid Jung will gossip about her once she leaves. Jung starts bothering Yeonwoo by bringing up Director Lee, and how Yeonwoo seems to have more privileges than her. Just then, a man interrupts, saying there's a call for Yeonwoo from the executive director's office. Her heart sinks at the mention of the executive director's office. As she enters, she asks why he called. He shoves a document in her face and demands to know what it is. Grabbing her, he accuses her of planning all this behind his back. He points out that the date on the resignation letter is from when he was still in Dubai. She denies it, saying she didn't plan anything. He questions why she didn't mention quitting until her last day. She explains that she's quitting because she needs a break and the work here doesn't fit her. Inside, she's relieved that she's almost done, she just needs to keep deceiving him a bit longer. She tells him this, and he confesses that he wanted them to get married. Hearing this, she feels like resigning was the right decision. She mentions she wants to learn how to cook, study a bit more, and do some traveling. Lee responds that if that was her reason, she should have told him earlier. She explains he was busy with work during his trip to Dubai, and he understands. Since her resignation was confirmed anyway, he suggests they go ahead with her plans. He suggests buying her a car so she can pursue her interests freely. He promises to seek his grandfather's permission for their marriage later on. Hugging her, he expresses his happiness that she agreed to marry him. He asks what she wants to learn next and suggests moving in with him. He assures her that he'll find a private tutor so she can explore whatever she desires. He mentions he'll move in with her once they get her grandfather's blessing. She agrees and says she's leaving now to say goodbye to her co-workers. Lee hugs her from behind and apologizes for suddenly yelling at her earlier, admitting he scared her. He suggests having a party on Saturday to celebrate her resignation and promises to prepare her favorite rose wine. As Yeonwoo is carrying her box to leave, Youngmi rushes in, exclaiming how she can't leave without saying goodbye. Yeonwoo explains she thought Youngmi was out. Youngmi hands her a gift, insisting that since she's going to travel, she should wear the lipstick she's giving her and send a selfie from her destination. They should plan a casual meet-up sometime soon. Yeonwoo wasn't just relieved about leaving, there were mixed emotions. Despite the tough moments, Miri Construction was her first job ever. Maybe that's why it's been hard for her to walk away for so long. As Yeonwoo boards the bus out of the city, she crafts lies in her texts to Lee. She says inwardly that by tomorrow afternoon, her number might not even work anymore. Although breaking up will be tough and painful for her initially, she genuinely hopes he'll find happiness in the end. Later that day, she arrives at her destination and heads to her grandfather's grave. She pours a drink on the grave, explaining that she came earlier this time because she might not be able to make it on the anniversary of his passing. She quit her job yesterday, so she could do what she wants before she gets too old. She asks her grandfather to watch over her so things can go well. 8 years ago, on a cloudy winter day, when she was 19 years old, her grandpa seemed sad as he closed down his nursery due to financial problems. Until then, she had believed there were many happy days ahead of her. When they reached the house of the Miri Construction's chairman, it was much grander than their farmhouse in Hwaesong. At that time, she didn't understand the significance of the daughter-in-law's lingering gaze behind her. She was so naive back then. Yeonwoo, her grandfather, and Chairman Lee chat about plants, sharing stories and laughing together. As they drive back after delivering the orchids to Chairman Lee's house, it begins to snow. Sitting in the car with her grandfather, they chat casually. When he brings up Chairman Lee's house, the first thing that pops into her head is the expression on the daughter-in-law's face. Yeonwoo and her grandfather both get into an accident. When Yeonwoo snaps back to reality, she sees half of her grandpa's body trapped in the crushed truck. She bangs on the broken window, but it won't open, and she cries out for someone to help save her grandpa. As his consciousness fades, her grandpa expresses concern for her. He assures her that he'll watch over her from above, ensuring everything goes well for her. Those were his last words. Yeonwoo's grandfather's funeral became an elaborate affair, a grand event orchestrated by the chairman of Miri Construction, who took charge of all the arrangements. It was a gesture of immense kindness, one that left a lasting impression on Yeonwoo. With her grandfather's passing, she found herself suddenly orphaned, thrust into a world of uncertainty. However, the chairman stepped in, offering her a lifeline by bringing her to Seoul and assuming the role of her guardian. In the midst of her grief, Yeonwoo felt adrift, grappling with the loss of her only family. Yet, Chairman Lee's unwavering support provided her with a sense of stability and comfort during those tumultuous days. He became a constant presence in her life, offering solace and guidance as she navigated through the pain of her loss. Whether it was attending to her needs or offering a shoulder to lean on, Chairman Lee was there for her, tirelessly tending to her well-being day and night. 3 days later, Chairman Lee sat with Yeonwoo, urging her to eat as much as she wanted. He comforted her with kind words. Meanwhile, outside, the daughter-in-law watched with envy. She felt resentful, thinking Chairman Lee didn't care about her own daughter's death. Chairman Lee then had a conversation with Jonggae. He sympathized with her loss of her daughter due to a weak heart, and he mentioned Yeonwoo's situation. He expressed his hope that Jonghae would treat Yeonwoo like her own daughter. He then turned to the maids, Munsan and Jongin, instructing them to pay special attention to Yeonwoo and take good care of her. That day, Yeonwoo met Chairman Lee's grandson, Lee Seokheon, for the first time. He seemed distant and uninterested. It brought back tough and hurtful memories from when she was 19 years old. Now, Yeonwoo tells her grandpa that she had to leave the house because Chairman Lee showed her so much kindness by taking her in as his granddaughter when she had nowhere else to go. No matter where she goes, she believes she'll have a good life, and she promises to return soon. She didn't want to disgrace her grandpa's name, who had raised her all on his own. She takes out her SIM card and throws it away. Meanwhile, at Lee's house, he waits for Yeonwoo, growing increasingly worried as she's running late. He tries calling her, but the number is no longer in service. Worried, he rushes to her house, where he finds a woman cleaning. She explains that she was asked by the owner to clean the place for the new tenant. He calls Yeonwoo's friend at work, but they have no information about her. Frustrated, he continues to try calling her, but the number doesn't connect. He waits all night for Yeonwoo, but she doesn't come, and he can't reach her. In the end, he realizes he's been abandoned. At Lee's house, he drops the glass he's using to drink water and cuts his hand. All he can think about is how Yeonwoo could have done this. Ms. Park comes in and says there might be a piece of glass stuck in his skin, so he should go to the hospital. But he insists he's fine. He tells Ms. Park that Yeonwoo is gone. Ms. Park asks why she would leave him. He says if she runs away, he'll have to bring her back. And once he brings her back, he'll have to ask her why she would break someone's trust like this. He asks Ms. Park what to do next. She says she'll start by checking the CCTV footage from Yeonwoo's apartment building to see where she went. He tells her to hire any professionals she needs, and if she has to bribe a few people, she shouldn't hesitate. She should use whatever it takes to bring Yeonwoo back to him. She says that according to the CCTV footage, Yeonwoo spent one night in Hwaesong and then went to her home village. Lee compliments her on the good work. While he is taking a bath, he thinks about how, since Yeonwoo disappeared, his desire for her has only grown stronger. That day, Lee goes to Hwaesong, but Yeonwoo's trail goes cold there. He calls Ms. Park and asks if she has found out anything more about Yeonwoo's location. Ms. Park says Yeonwoo's phone signal is off, and she hasn't withdrawn any money or used her credit card. Lee tells her to hire some people to look for Yeonwoo. He says he doesn't care how much it costs, she just needs to bring Yeonwoo back to him. Lee wonders what he did wrong. His longing turns into desire, and that desire makes him angry. He vows to never let Yeonwoo go. In Hanam City, at a plant import company, Yeonwoo's back hurts as she works. A guy walks in and tells her to eat first. He says she should leave the heavy stuff to him. He wipes her face, but she insists she'll clean it herself. He asks why she moved the heavy stuff, and she explains, but he says she should have asked him. The doctor told her not to move or lift anything heavy during pregnancy. 1 month after she ran away from Seokheon, she found out she was pregnant. The guy grabs her hand and says they should hurry out because he already ordered food. She gently removes her hand, smiling, and says she's coming. He looks at her with a sad face. At Hanjung restaurant, Sura and Seongkuk smile and wave at Yeonwoo. Her daily life, surrounded by plants and kind people, is the most comfortable she's ever been. Morning sickness is awful, but at least her mind is at ease. Around the table, everyone encourages Yeonwoo to eat, because getting enough nutrition is important for a pregnant woman. The guy from earlier says that thanks to her help with the deposit 2 years ago, his business was saved and is now doing well. He says he'll never be able to repay her for that. Yeonwoo replies that making her the co-owner right after she quit her job was already more than enough. Just then, Yeonwoo starts feeling morning sickness again. She rushes off, and Seongkuk tells the other guy that he should probably go after her. He knows the father's role is important during this period. Since he's her boyfriend, he should take good care of her. Just outside, the guy who's supposed to be Yeonwoo's boyfriend goes to meet her. He asks if she's okay, and she shakes her head. She keeps throwing up while he pats her back. She tells him she's going back to the greenhouse, so he shouldn't worry about her, and should just enjoy his meal. But Do-kyung grabs her hand and takes her in his car. He suggests going to a nearby cafe to eat a sandwich instead, thinking the seasoning smell might have made her sick. She insists she's fine, but he clarifies he wants to eat one. At the cafe, he orders a decaf coffee for her, and she thanks him. He gently wonders if she's sure she doesn't want to let the baby's father know about the pregnancy. Yeonwoo replies that their relationship is already over, so she'd rather keep it to herself. He nods understandingly, saying he shouldn't have brought it up in the first place. In the car, things get awkward, and Do-kyung breaks the silence by promising not to ask her any uncomfortable questions again. He tells her she can stay as long as she needs to. After all, they are business partners. He still owes her for her investment, so he suggests she should just relax and take it easy, exercising her rights. 2 months have passed since Yeonwoo disappeared. At grandfather Lee's house, he wonders why Yeonwoo wouldn't have taken her phone on her trip if she's been roaming around fine lately. Seokheon mentions that she said she's going to visit other places too after Southeast Asia. Grandfather Lee says he'll relax since he's looking into it, although he admits his dreams have been quite strange recently. He shares a dream he had where a dragon flew into their house, convinced it's somehow connected to Yeonwoo. Perhaps she's found someone special during her travels, he muses. The sister-in-law enters, criticizing Yeonwoo for being immature, but he disagrees. He argues that she shouldn't be so quick to judge, considering how suffocated Yeonwoo must have felt to take off on such a long trip without a word. The sister-in-law tells Seokheon that the head of Hansol law firm wants to meet him. She mentions that he wants to set Seokheon up with someone. Grandfather Lee suggests that maybe his dream was actually about Seokheon, but Seokheon quickly says he's not interested. As time goes on, Seokheon feels his heart burning to ashes more and more. He still hasn't found any clues about where Yeonwoo is. When he sees a book on his desk with pictures of Yeonwoo with friends inside, he tears it apart in frustration. He mutters that Jang Do-kyung was definitely Yeonwoo's first love. Do-kyung was one of the people connected to Yeonwoo and her dark past. It all started when he was 15. His father had a mistress who found success with his father's support. He couldn't bear to see his mother cry anymore. So, he left a comment on an article about his father's mistress. He wanted to expose the true ugliness behind her facade. But little did he know, that comment would become the trigger for everything that followed. After the incident, that woman publicly admitted she was indeed his father's mistress. As a result, his mother, who suffered from depression, tragically committed suicide. That woman then used her daughter to ultimately marry his father. However, on the day she moved into their house, his father started going out a lot again. He shifted his affection to a younger and more beautiful woman. Since then, he made a promise to himself to hide all his feelings and live as his mother had advised him to. From that day on, he always acted like he didn't care, even in front of Jonghae, the woman who had caused his mother so much pain. When he was 26 and Yeonwoo was 19, she brought him a drink that Jonghae had made, but he tossed it away. Even then, he couldn't stand the sight of Yeonwoo, just like Jonghae, who thought of herself as his mother just because she was legally married to his father. He believed Yeonwoo was also deluding herself into thinking she was a real part of the family. At that time, all he cared about was getting enough power to kick out that annoying woman himself. But unexpectedly, he discovered Jonghae's weakness in the most surprising way. Her polished facade had cracked, showing that someone could really get to her. Should he try the same tactic with Yeonwoo? At home, Grandfather Lee asks Seokheon if he's going to school, and Seokheon says yes. Grandfather asks if he has something to tell him, and Seokheon says yes. He's thinking about becoming Yeonwoo's tutor if she needs help with any subjects. Grandfather is happy to hear that and says it'll be great to have siblings studying together. A year after Jonggae married his father, her daughter passed away from illness. She couldn't accept his grandfather asking her to treat Yeonwoo as a replacement for her own daughter. So, he started pretending that Yeonwoo and he were real siblings, just to annoy Jonggae. Yeonwoo turns out to be more careful than he expected. She's tactful and doesn't make any mistakes after that one day. He praises Yeonwoo in front of everyone. Even though he treated Jonggae's daughter poorly, he pretends to look after Yeonwoo, as if she's his real little sister. He spent the entire summer vacation by her side. Whenever his stepmother sees them together, she can't control herself and scowls. But the more she does that, the more he takes care of Yeonwoo. And just like that, he waits for the moment when Jonggae's mask will shatter again. In school, he protects Yeonwoo from some girls who are trying to gossip and insult her. Even though he always keeps up his act in front of Jonggae, when it's just Yeonwoo and him, he doesn't bother with any of that. After all, to him, Yeonwoo is just another stranger. In the middle of November that year, Yeonwoo gets accepted to Hankook University College of Agriculture and Life Sciences through early admission. As a result, their tutoring sessions come to an end without him finding Yeonwoo's weakness. But then, one day, an opportunity presents itself. He sees Dokyeong confessing his love to her and kissing her. He goes to where they are and pulls Yeonwoo away from Dokyeong. Dokyeong tells him to get lost, but he takes Yeonwoo home. He threatens Yeonwoo with the CCTV footage, wondering if this tactic will actually work on her. Surprisingly, it does. Finally, he has Yeonwoo under his control. He blackmails Yeonwoo into calling Jonggae mother, and saying some things at dinner that really made Jonggae angry. That marked the end of their fake truce. Yeonwoo even gets grandfather to call Jonggae a wicked woman. After that day, Jonggae started taking antidepressants. The woman who caused his mother to die from depression ended up losing her mind just the same. Their once peaceful home falls back into a cold atmosphere. With winter approaching, he has achieved his goal and leaves for the US to study and prepare for his succession. After Seokheon left to work for an investment company in the US, the tension between his grandfather and Jonggae gets even worse. Stuck in the middle of their conflict, Yeonwoo feels suffocated and drained with each passing day. As soon as Yeonwoo graduates from college, she moves out. That summer, Seokheon returns from America, now 31 years old. He's happy to find the house atmosphere as cold as ever. He visits Yeonwoo in her apartment and notices she's changed a lot while he was away. After they chat for a bit, she says he only feels obligated to help her after using her to cause trouble with Jonggae. It seems Yeonwoo has known all along. She tells him she's disliked him from the beginning and can't believe people like him still exist. The next day, Seokheon visits her again. She asks what he wants, but he goes inside her apartment, opens the window, and starts putting her clothes in the trash, saying things lying around like trash aren't clothes. They are trash. He only goes to see Yeonwoo again, because he feels he owes her. He calls her boss and says she won't be working at the cafe anymore. He explains that she looks pale from not getting enough sleep, and doesn't even look like herself anymore. He promises to come every day until she starts looking like a decent human again. He gets that she wants to live freely now that she's independent, but he just hopes she's doing okay. He tells her she shouldn't go back to her job, or else he'll have to drag her back home. From then on, Seokheon comes over to her place every day. If she doesn't open the door, he keeps ringing the bell until she does. So, she has no other choice. Once he's in, he nags at her endlessly. The next day, Seokheon comes in and announces that he's going to be living with her from now on. He tells her to just focus on her studies. He suggests that she apply for Miri Construction's next open recruitment. He says she already has the basics down, so even if she starts preparing now, she'll do fine. He mentions that he heard her grandfather's dream was for her to work at a major company. She tells Seokheon that her grandfather's dream for her was simply to live a good life. They discuss her grandfather's farm, and Seokheon suggests that if she works at Myri, her grandfather will start seeing her as an adult. He promises that after 5 years, he'll have the farm of her dreams built for her. She questions if this is compensation for using her when she was a teenager, and she reminds him to make sure he keeps his promise. They go out to eat, and a few days later, Seokheon leaves a letter for Yeonwoo. In the letter, he says he'll kill her if she doesn't get in. Yeonwoo decides to go to the company for the test. Seokheon tells his assistant to go and give Yeonwoo lunch since she came early. A week later, Yeonwoo successfully clears the second round of Myri Construction's open recruitment. Excited, she shares the news with Seokheon and gently asks him when he plans to move out of her apartment. Seokheon responds, teasing her about her newfound ability to dish out insults, implying she's matured. However, Yeonwoo expresses her longing to sleep in her own bed again, urging him to please leave soon. He invites her to join him, mentioning he's on special leave today, a favor from the chairman. Delighted that she passed the aptitude test, he insists on taking her shopping for clothes. He won't even let her step into the office. He's curious about the photo she used for her application, asking her about it. When grandfather sees her application, he nearly has a heart attack. He warns Seokheon that if Yeonwoo shows up to the interview in shabby clothes, there will be consequences. Yeonwoo shares that she wasn't expecting to apply for a job like this, so she didn't dress up for the photo. She just put on whatever she had at the moment. Seokheon adds that his grandfather is still stuck on how bad the photo made her look. Yeonwoo suggests she should change into something nicer, but he insists she should stay the way she is. They arrive at the beauty salon, where one of the employees works on Yeonwoo. She does Yeonwoo's makeup and hair, just as Seokheon wanted, with her hair tied up. Yeonwoo remarks to him that he must be making a lot of money since the stylist is so famous. He casually responds that he's always had a lot of money. She acknowledges this but points out that he seems to be spending a ridiculous amount lately. He assures her that even if he spends a lot, it won't make a dent in his finances, so she shouldn't worry. She jokes that if that's the case, she's going to spend as much as she wants to. After a while, he asks her if she's finished, and she inquires if it was worth the money. He sighs, remarking that grandfather has really gotten old, wasting money on useless things. Angrily, she retorts that he said it was his money. He clarifies that he only mentioned it wouldn't make a dent, without specifying which account. She argues that if he had told her, she wouldn't have spent so much. He tells her to lighten up, noting that even with a total makeover, she still looks the same. Next stop is the boutique, and Seokheon insists it's his treat this time. He encourages her to choose some suits for work as well. Yeonwoo hesitates, wondering why she would buy work clothes when she hasn't passed the final round yet. Seokheon reassures her, saying unless she does something outrageous like slapping the interviewer, there's no way they won't accept her. She questions why she should get 2 more suits on top of the 5 two-pieces. Seokheon responds, saying she can buy 7, 10, or however many more she wants. She then chooses the suits she wanted. A month later, Yeonwoo receives acceptance into Myri Construction. In her apartment, she sits back and breathes a huge sigh of relief, finding it hard to believe that Seokheon actually left as soon as she got hired. She never imagined they'd end up spending 2 whole months together like that. It's like she's found a new sense of brightness since reconnecting with Seokheon. She supposes he wasn't as terrible as she thought. But regardless, this marks her first real job, so she's determined to give it her all. During the Myri Construction new recruit training retreat, Yeonwoo finds herself questioning why the last day has to be all about fitness. She's not really the athletic type. Some girls approach her, asking if she's heard of director Lee Seokheon. Yeonwoo plays it cool, pretending she doesn't know him. She figures he might show up because he's the youngest among the executives. But she can't imagine he'd willingly come to this smelly, damp auditorium. The girls are totally smitten with Seokheon. Meanwhile, there's this guy named Taiwan who seems to be coming in first for every test they've had during the retreat. The ladies also love to gossip about Taiwan and admire Seokheon's good looks. Yeonwoo quietly thinks to herself that even if they brought a truckload of guys like Seokheon, she'd still manage to pass. But she keeps mum about Seokheon's true personality. But now that she thinks about it, Seokheon does have a nice body, even though she personally finds him a bit too much. But why is she feeling embarrassed? The fitness test begins, and as Seokheon gives his congratulatory speech, Yeonwoo quietly wonders if his voice has always been this dignified. As Yeonwoo is getting ready to start the race, a guy approaches her to offer some comfort, giving her a shoulder massage. Seokheon watches from afar, feeling a twinge of jealousy. Just as she starts the race, she trips and falls, hurting one of her legs. Seokheon rushes over to Yeonwoo, asking if she can stand. She admits she doesn't think she can. He lifts her up and tells her to call his driver because they need to go to the hospital. Inside the car, he remarks that she's not good at sports, so why did she volunteer to run? She responds that maybe he doesn't know, being all high and mighty. He counters that since she's able to chat like this, her injury might not be as bad as he initially thought. He removes her shoe and places a cold bottle on her leg, wondering why everything she does makes him so mad. Later, after her leg is bandaged, she reflects that the relay was going suspiciously smoothly. He questions why she bothered joining in when she's not athletic at all. After some conversation, he proposes that she should stay at his place. He tells her if she's left alone at home, it'll turn into a mess again. He insists she stays here and enjoys what the housekeeper cooks. She suggests she can call her own housekeeper, but he firmly says he won't repeat himself. She should stay here while he's asking nicely. As she thinks to herself, Yeonwoo considers whether her colleagues might be worried. Maybe she should send them a message. Then, she asks Seokheon if she can use his computer. While trying to make her way to the room, she stumbles, but he's there to catch her. He questions if he has to do everything for her. She responds, saying she never asked for his help and he should stop meddling. He inquires about her need for his computer, and she elaborates, expressing her desire to reassure her colleagues that she's fine now. Then, he delves into her previous interactions with guys, hinting that if she joined the company solely for dating, she should consider resigning. He finds such behavior intolerable. She wonders where he got such an idea, emphasizing her closer bond with her female colleagues. He persists, suggesting she try something reckless and see if he'll overlook it. She questions why he's suddenly playing the role of a protective older brother, given that he previously swore she would never be his little sister. It's clear he's trying to act like a big brother, who won't allow his younger sister to date anyone. He responds, telling her not to mix things up. He clarifies that he never considered her as part of his family. She insists she's leaving, but he reminds her that he told her to stay. Frustrated by the criticism she faced for wanting to use his computer, she argues she might as well be at her own place, where she can rest comfortably. He retorts that she never listens. Surprisingly, he lifts her up, leaving her puzzled. She questions why he's acting this way, wanting her out of his face when she's around, but not letting her leave when she wants to. He lays her down on the bed and tells her it's annoying to make someone worry about her. He urges her to get some rest. Frustrated, she screams that no one asked him to worry about her. Youngmi and Hyuna chat with Yeonwoo, gossiping about Seokheon. Yeonwoo starts blushing. After a while, Seokheon enters the room and asks what she's looking at. She quickly turns, holding the iPad. He asks why she's hiding the screen like that. She tells him not to butt into her personal life, but he insists she give it to him. She says his robe is open, and it's really creeping her out. She wants him to go away, but he insists she hand it over while he's still asking nicely. She argues that he shouldn't take back something he's already given to her. He finally takes it, looks at it, smirks, and leaves the iPad on the table. When she looks at the iPad, she sees he wrote in their chat that Director Lee is so cool. She feels like her image is ruined. At the office, Seokheon is looking at the profile of a guy he saw earlier. The guy's name is Lee Ki-young. Seokheon is curious about him, so he decides to find out more. He calls Ms. Park and says he wants to have a meeting with one of the new recruits on the list. He specifically asks to meet with Lee Ki-young. A few days later, Yeonwoo gets some news about her job. She is informed that her assignment to a new position has been postponed. The reason is that she got injured at work, so they need to wait until she recovers before she can start the new position. She feels a bit disappointed but understands that her health comes first. Yeonwoo says that it's not like she can go into the office right now anyway, so it's actually great. She explains that if she had been assigned to a team and still couldn't report for work, she would have felt terrible towards her co-workers. She only agreed to stay at Seokheon's place until her leg healed, but at some point, she just got used to things there. Seokheon gave her his room since it was hard for her to walk around, and he took the guest room, which had a smaller bed. Although she finds it a bit surprising and is somewhat suspicious of how unexpectedly sensible he seems this time around, she appreciates his help. Yeonwoo is sitting in the living room, chatting with Ki-young. He tells her that he got assigned to the director's office and offers to buy her lunch or dinner sometime. As they talk, Seokheon walks in and asks why she's so busy that she won't even look up when someone enters the room. Yeonwoo explains that she was messaging her co-worker. Seokheon leaves angrily, and Yeonwoo is left wondering what's bothering him. Later that night, Seokheon tells himself it's time for bed. He wonders if the alarm is broken, then quickly rushes to Yeonwoo's room. He finds her trembling on her bed. He asks her what's wrong and tells her to snap out of it. He hugs her and asks why she's acting like this, urging her to tell him what's bothering her. Yeonwoo explains that her back is burning and hurting a lot. Seokheon lifts her shirt a bit and sees some strange marks. He's shocked and asks her what happened to her back and why it looks like that. Yeonwoo trembles and says she's scared because her back hurts so much. When Yeonwoo was only 4, a terrible fire took both her parents. She was lucky to survive, but it came with a cost. Her mom saved her, but she suffered serious burns on her back. To heal, she needed many surgeries and help for her emotional pain. This is what it's like living with trauma. Seokheon had no clue it could be so bad. As he touches her back, he notices it doesn't feel hot, which is a relief. He rushes to grab some ice packs to ease her pain. He stays by her side, wanting to help her feel better. Seokheon was clueless about the emotions swirling inside Yeonwoo. Despite his efforts to ease the burning sensation she described, she couldn't seem to find calm. Her tremors traveled up his hands as he tried to comfort her. He softly caresses and pats her, repeating reassuring words to help her feel better. He tells her they are okay together, and he's there for her no matter what. He stays by her side, offering support and comfort through the tough time. An hour passes, and Seokheon can't help but wonder why Yeonwoo's life has to be so tough. He feels sorry for her, but then questions why he feels that way. Why did he even decide to take care of Yeonwoo in the first place? There wasn't anything in it for him. He feels like he's messed up. Maybe he should have just ignored Yeonwoo from the beginning so he wouldn't have to deal with these feelings. But now he thinks he's figured it out. Lately, Seokheon has been feeling annoyed, and he finally figures out why. Every time he sees Yeonwoo talking to that guy Ki-young, it feels like swallowing a sharp needle. He realizes it's because he doesn't want Ki-young to be a source of comfort for Yeonwoo. This feeling is familiar to him. He's felt something like it before. Seokheon realizes that he's been holding onto that incident with Yeonwoo and causing chaos in his household because he hated Jonghae. But it's not just about that. He's also been feeling angry with Yeonwoo for being close with another guy. The idea of someone else having a special place in Yeonwoo's heart bothers him a lot. He knows deep down that he wants Yeonwoo to be his alone. His instincts are telling him that he desires to have her all to himself, and he's starting to understand this feeling more and more. Hours pass, and Yeonwoo wakes up to find Seokheon cuddling her as he sleeps. Confused, she wonders why her shirt is pulled up like this. She gently shakes him awake and asks why he's sleeping here beside her. Seokheon tells her that she was screaming because of a nightmare, so he hurried over to comfort her. In her distress, she asked him to hold her, and he stayed by her side until she fell asleep. Now, he gently suggests that they should get up, because they need to go to the hospital. She tells Seokheon she's okay, saying the injury happened a long time ago, so it doesn't hurt anymore. But he points out that she hasn't done anything about the scars from her surgery. He suggests she change her clothes and come out. In her mind, Yeonwoo realizes that the bedsheets are still warm, making her aware that they did sleep together. She wonders if she really asked him to hold her last night. At the doctor's office, the doctor tells Yeonwoo that she stopped her scar treatments halfway through. Now, the parts around where she had sutures have risen up and become keloid scars. He explains that if these scars keep growing and spreading to her healthy skin, it could become a bigger problem. While they can usually cut out keloid scars and stitch the area back up, the doctor doesn't think it's the best option for Yeonwoo. Instead, he recommends starting with injection treatments around her keloid scars. As Yeonwoo takes the injection, Seokheon holds her hand for support. Yeonwoo can't help but wonder why he's suddenly showing so much care and attention. In the car, Seokheon mentions to Yeonwoo that she should have mentioned her symptoms to him or his grandfather sooner. Yeonwoo responds, saying he wanted her to share, but she felt like he didn't really care about her. Inside, Yeonwoo feels a bit uneasy about how close they've become lately. She realizes that she needs to stay strong and not let their closeness affect her decisions. She makes a promise to herself that she won't allow herself to be swayed by their growing bond. An hour passes, and Seokheon suggests to Yeonwoo that she should lift her shirt so he can apply the ointment for her. Seeing how stiff she is, he knows she won't reach properly on her own. He promises not to peek, so he encourages her to just take her shirt off. Seokheon figures it would be more comfortable for her to do it herself rather than relying on him. He wants to make sure she feels as comfortable as possible. Seokheon is just putting on the ointment, but it's making her really nervous. She tells him to stop and says he doesn't have to do it for her. He looks at her and asks if he's bothering her. She shakes her head and asks why he thinks that. He doesn't say anything at first, just keeps looking at her with a gentle smile. Then, without warning, he hugs her from behind, wrapping his arms around her tightly. She feels his warmth and relaxes a little, realizing he just wants to help. Yeonwoo's face is blushing, and her breathing is quick. Seokheon has always gotten what he wanted, and this time won't be any different. He is determined that Yeonwoo will be his. They start kissing, and he thinks to himself that he finally understands why he wanted to make her cry before. It was probably just his own selfish desire. The way his whole body reacts from the moment they kiss proves it. Yeonwoo tells him to please stop, and says they shouldn't be doing this. He asks why not, pointing out that her body is clearly responding to him. He says all her talk about him being her actual older brother, and them seeming like real siblings, is just her way of denying what she really feels. They have never acted like true siblings. Her eyes always waver when she looks at him, and the way she watches him is not like a younger sister at all. He kisses her again, and she thinks to herself that everything he said is right. They've always been walking on thin ice. Just like him, she has never thought of them as family. How could she see someone who bothers her so much as family? He is the most impressive person she has ever known. He is always confident and stands tall above everyone else. The harder she tried to ignore him and pretend he had no effect on her, the more she failed. She never expected he'd see right through her. But now, she feels like she's betraying the chairman. She wonders if it's really all right for them to do this, worrying that they might be making a huge mistake. It has to be a mistake, right? She feels her heart racing with doubt and confusion. Seokheon sees the uncertainty in her eyes and gently tells her not to look away. He says he doesn't want her to miss a second of this moment. His words are soft but firm, making her feel a mix of fear and excitement. As they start getting intimate, she can't stop thinking about how they've reached this point. He thinks to himself that if he has to treat Yeonwoo as family, it will only be as his woman, not his sister. The thought of seeing her in any other way is impossible for him now. She feels the same pull, unable to deny the attraction any longer. They both give in to their desire, knowing that this moment changes everything between them. Back in the present, Dokyong tells Yeonwoo that he'll take her to the obstetrician. She asks him about work, and he says he's playing hooky today. She looks worried and says he should be super busy now that it's spring. She wonders if it's really okay for him to be away from the greenhouse, especially since he has a lot to prepare if he wants to start his online shop. He smiles and reassures her, saying that no matter how busy he is, he can still make time to take her to the doctor. His words make her feel better, knowing he will always prioritize her. Dokyong asks Yeonwoo if she would like to manage things online. He suggests that just calculating their sales revenue while she recovers from labor at home should be enough. She asks what makes him trust her so much, and he smiles, telling her not to make him feel bad. He says he's willing to do anything if it's for her. He then tells her he found a new clinic downtown that has a nice, clean postpartum care center. He reminds her that she's already 17 weeks along, and will need to get more checkups now. She feels reassured by his words and knows he's thinking of her and the baby's well-being. Yeonwoo hasn't gotten a proper checkup by an obstetrician yet because she worries they'll keep a record of her name, which could be used to find her. It's already been 4 months, so Seokheon has probably given up on looking for her by now. But at 17 weeks, her belly is starting to show, so she can't put off getting things checked any longer. At the hospital, Yeonwoo makes it clear that while she will be having the baby on her own due to her situation, she's going to take full responsibility for it no matter what. She feels a mix of nerves and determination, knowing this is the best decision for her and the baby. Yeonwoo tells the doctor that she has a job that earns enough money to take care of a child and a strong sense of responsibility, so he doesn't need to worry. The doctor smiles and says okay, they should move on to discussing her medical condition. He mentions that it seems she's been doing well with regularly taking her folic acid and taking care of herself. The doctor continues, saying that from now on, she should start taking iron supplements too. He explains that if she brings her maternity certificate to her local health center, they'll give her the supplements for free. He also mentions that she'll need to take a blood test today. He thinks she's brave for choosing to have the baby on her own. He reassures her that he's here to give her all the help she needs, and they should both do their best until the end. Yeonwoo feels grateful for the doctor's support and nods, ready to take on whatever comes her way. The doctor does the ultrasound and tells her that the baby is growing perfectly fine. He informs her that she's having a baby boy. After the appointment, in the car, she tells Dokyong that the baby is healthy and it's a boy. Inside, she feels excited to pick a good nickname for him tonight. She promises to come up with something that sounds adorable and sweet to his ears. At Seokheon's workplace, Ms. Park has just been told about Yeonwoo's whereabouts. She quickly runs off to inform Seokheon, saying they found a record of Yeonwoo's recent hospital visit. Seokheon immediately rushes to his car and tells his driver to drive faster. He feels a mix of worry and urgency as he races to find Yeonwoo, hoping she's okay. Meanwhile, in Dokyong's car, he asks Yeonwoo if there's anything she wants to eat. She shakes her head, saying they should hurry back to work. He reassures her, saying it'll be fine since they finished the supply orders yesterday anyway. He tells her that now, the only thing important to him is making sure she's taken care of. She hesitates for a moment before speaking up, saying she's only telling him this just in case, but they can never happen. He furrows his brows, asking why not. She explains that the owner of a fast-growing business shouldn't get tangled up with a single mother. He listens quietly, understanding her concerns, but his determination to support her remains unchanged. He tells her all he's doing is repaying the person he's indebted to and occasionally playing her baby's uncle. They decide to go out to eat, and while they are out, he suggests that they should buy the baby a pair of shoes. She hesitates, saying there are still 6 months left until the expected date. But he insists, finally convincing her that they should get something for the baby. She smiles, feeling grateful for his thoughtfulness, and agrees to pick out something special for her little one. Do-kyung pays for some expensive outfits for the baby, wanting to be the first to buy a gift for her since he owes Yeonwoo so much. She thanks him, touched by his gesture. Meanwhile, Seokheon has reached the address of the house written on Yeonwoo's file at the clinic, but nobody is home. The moment he saw the name on the bill, his heart went from raging to frozen solid. It's Jang Do-kyung. He feels a mix of shock and disbelief, unsure of what to do next. He decides they should head to a plant in the flower complex near Hanam Highway. When he arrives, he sees a lady named Sura. He asks if there's someone named Yeonwoo, and she tells him that Yeonwoo went to check on her baby at the hospital. She went with the baby's dad, Do-kyung. Seokheon's heart sinks as he realizes Yeonwoo is with Do-kyung, feeling a mix of frustration and worry. He quickly decides to find out more about where they are, the moment he realizes that Yeonwoo ran away from him into the arms of her first love. The coldness in Seokheon's heart reignites into burning rage. Just then, Do-kyung walks in, and Sura informs him and Yeonwoo that they have a visitor. When Yeonwoo sees Seokheon, she drops the bag in her hand. Do-kyung asks if she's feeling okay and who the guy is. Seokheon grabs her hand, telling her she should follow him, but she removes it, saying to let go. Tension fills the room as everyone feels the weight of the situation. Seokheon says, "Will you go while I'm asking nicely, or do I have to drag you out myself?" Do-kyung tells him to stop and asks who he thinks he is, but Seokheon says it's none of his business. He notices Yeonwoo's big tummy and remarks that there's a limit to how much she can try deceiving him. He tells her to come with him, but Do-kyung steps in, saying she's not going anywhere. He asks Seokheon what he means by deceiving him, his voice firm but calm. The tension in the room grows as they face off, each determined to stand their ground. Seokheon says she told him she was going to marry him, and now she's running away on him. Yeonwoo explains she only said that because he kept pressuring her when she refused. Seokheon argues they've done more together than most married couples, so she should come with him. Do-kyung steps in, blocking her path and asking who Seokheon thinks he is to talk to her like that. Seokheon then brings up the fact that he's Yeonwoo's older brother, adding another layer of tension to the situation. Seokheon grabs Do-kyung and questions if he's ever seen siblings go that far together. Do-kyung responds honestly, saying he doesn't care what kind of relationship he used to have with Yeonwoo, but she's pregnant with his child now. He adds that she just got past her first trimester, so she needs to be relaxed. He tells Seokheon to stop making a scene at his wife and his workplace and leave already. Then, he turns to Yeonwoo and gently instructs her to go inside the greenhouse, wanting to shield her from further confrontation. Yeonwoo nods, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion, and follows his guidance, hoping for a moment of peace amidst. Do-kyung gives Seokheon his card and says if he has any business with Yeonwoo, he'd like him to contact him first as her husband. Everyone there thinks Do-kyung is the father of Yeonwoo's baby. As Do-kyung watches Seokheon leave, he feels relieved to have been able to protect Yeonwoo, even though he didn't know any better. He hopes this will prevent any further misunderstandings or conflicts in the future. Seokheon decides to stay in a hotel. No one could have guessed the length Seokheon was willing to go to after hearing that Yeonwoo was pregnant with another man's child. He feels a mix of emotions, anger, betrayal, and a sense of loss. Seokheon sits alone, sipping his drink and thinking about what happened earlier. He can't shake off the thought, is Yeonwoo really carrying Do-kyung's child? How could she do this to him? The weight of the situation hits him hard, and he starts crying. Exhausted from the emotional turmoil, he eventually drifts off to sleep. In his dream, he sees Yeonwoo and Do-kyung together. They are hugging, kissing, and getting intimate. The scene feels so real, and it fills him with a mixture of sadness and anger. Just then, he suddenly wakes up, his heart pounding, realizing it was all just a dream. Seokheon takes a moment to catch his breath, trying to shake off the lingering emotions from the vivid dream. It's the next morning, and Seokheon declares there's no way he'll leave Yeonwoo alone with Do-kyung. Meanwhile, in Yeonwoo's house, Do-kyung realizes why she ran away. She apologizes, saying she had no idea he'd come looking for her. It's been 3 months, and she thought he would have forgotten about her by now and moved on with his life. As she trembles, Do-kyung suggests they eat first. He reminds her she has a baby to think of, so she needs to fill her stomach. Yeonwoo nods, feeling a mix of guilt and relief, as they sit down to eat. He suggests they should say her son is his until Seokheon leaves her alone. Unless Seokheon is a psycho, he won't force her to go with him knowing she's pregnant with another man's child. If she really doesn't want to go back, it's fine for her to claim her child as his. But she says she can't do that. He insists it's all right, sharing that he realized something seeing his parents bedridden after their business went bankrupt. At least until he's able to bring his family back up to where they used to be, he has no plans of getting married. He'll just be there until Seokheon gives up. Yeonwoo feels a mix of gratitude and guilt for his understanding and determination to protect her and their child. He suggests they should open the baby clothes, and he asks her if she found a nickname. She says she's going to call him Hope. Just then, someone starts banging at the door, calling her name. Do-kyung rushes to handle it. It's Seokheon. He pushes Do-kyung aside and enters the house. Do-kyung grabs him, asking what he's trying to do with his wife. Seokheon pushes him hard towards the door and tells him to shut up. Tension fills the room as the two men face off, each trying to assert their dominance. Yeonwoo rushes to Do-kyung, expressing her disappointment, saying she thought Seokheon was better than this. But he grabs her, and Do-kyung tries to intervene. Seokheon tells Do-kyung to stop acting like Yeonwoo is anything important to him. He reminds them that they only listened to him back when they were 19 because they were young, but now they are adults, and they even have a baby on the way. He questions if Do-kyung isn't embarrassed to be acting this way. Seokheon slams him, adding that Do-kyung doesn't know anything. Do-kyung fires back, asking what about Seokheon. Does he know what kind of food Yeonwoo likes to eat when she's tired? Does he know her favorite color, or her dream? What about the drink she likes to buy at the convenience store? Does he know any of that? The tension between them escalates as they both try to defend their relationship with Yeonwoo. Do-kyung begins answering all of his own questions, further provoking Seokheon's anger. Yeonwoo rushes to Do-kyung, hugging him tightly and pleading with Seokheon not to hit him. She pushes Seokheon out, telling him to leave. With frustration in her voice, she slams the door shut behind him, wanting to put an end to the confrontation and protect Do-kyung from any harm. Seokheon stays outside, smoking in frustration. Ms. Park informs him that Do-kyung is the son of Jang Se-hwa, the owner of a plant import company. Although that company went under after violating quarantine regulations, his father is barely managing to pay off the debt from the bankruptcy. It seems his father got support from an entrepreneurship program. But apparently, Yeonwoo also invested the 200 million won deposit for her old apartment. Seokheon tells Ms. Park to gather some people he can start using tomorrow morning. He's determined to take action. If they've been scheming behind his back, trying to deceive him, he's going to destroy everything they have right before their eyes. Then, he's going to take back what is rightfully his. His words are filled with anger and determination as he plans his next move, the next day, some guys invade Do-kyung's nursery. They take everyone's phones and restrain them. Then, they set fire to the nursery and quickly leave. Do-kyung and the others try desperately to put out the fire. As Do-kyung watches his nursery burn, he remembers all the hard work he put into it and how he shared every detail with Yeonwoo. She spends the last 3 months dreaming of a bright future here. She cries and apologizes to Do-kyung, blaming herself for everything. She feels guilty, thinking that none of this would have happened if she hadn't come to Do-kyung in the first place. She blames herself for the destruction of the nursery, and the pain it's causing everyone. In a hotel in Hanam, Seokheon receives a message from an unknown number, claiming to be Yeonwoo. She asks him to pick up, because she has something important to say. After some hesitation, he finally answers, telling her to talk. Yeonwoo accuses him of sending those guys to the nursery, causing suffering to innocent people. Seokheon denies it and says he didn't pick up the phone to listen to her complaints, so he's hanging up. Yeonwoo apologizes, but is skeptical, thinking she's lying again. She begs him to wait, asking what she can do to prevent him from pulling another stunt like that. Seokheon smirks and tells her to pack her things and come to his hotel within an hour, or she shouldn't bother packing at all. He's giving her an ultimatum, leaving Yeonwoo with a difficult decision to make. With contracts, showing weakness means you're the loser of the negotiation. The winner of this negotiation was already determined. Yeonwoo arrives at the hotel, and Seokheon confronts her, saying he thought she was going to spend the rest of her life with Do-kyung. Yeonwoo apologizes for tricking him into thinking she was going to marry him, and for packing all her stuff and running away from him. Seokheon admits he was willing to forgive her for all that, but then he heard she invested her money into Do-kyung's business. He suspects she was also seeing him while she was with Seokheon. The tension between them is palpable as they face each other, both hurt and disappointed by the revelations. She insists she swears she wasn't seeing Do-kyung while they were together. She explains that she invested in his business because seeing Do-kyung and his family struggle after their failed business reminded her of what happened to her and her grandpa. It's the truth, she emphasizes. She reminds Seokheon that they used to meet 3 or 4 times a week, and she wouldn't have the energy to regularly travel to Hanam and back to meet Do-kyung. Plus, Do-kyung wouldn't have the time either. Seokheon accuses her of reuniting with her first love after the longest time, and even making a baby with him. He raises her chin and asks her if it was good, if sleeping with Do-kyung was better than with him. He questions if Do-kyung was so precious to her that she was willing to toss him aside. She responds that she doesn't know what he wants from her, genuinely confused. Seokheon points out that she's been living comfortably until now, but the guy who would do anything to see her smile is gone now. He tells her that if she wants him to do her a favor, she should give him something in return. He pushes her onto the bed and tells her that if she doesn't have anything else to offer, then she should give him her body. She hesitates, asking if he's really planning to do that with her. He responds that if she doesn't want to, she can leave. Their negotiation is over. Feeling flustered, she fumbles, agreeing to do it. In exchange, she demands compensation for everything he's ruined. He agrees, but adds that it all depends on how she performs. The atmosphere in the room is tense as they make this agreement, both knowing the weight of what's being exchanged. The nursery at a plant can only reopen if Seokheon promises not to cause any more trouble and agrees to pay for the damages caused by reducing the facility to ashes. Yeonwoo had hoped to return to the nursery once everything was resolved. That's why she kept lying until the very end, clinging to the hope of rebuilding what was lost. Seokheon touches her stomach and asks again whose baby it is. She insists it's not his. He brushes it off, saying it doesn't matter because her next child will be his anyway. Yeonwoo wakes up and wonders when she fell asleep. Seokheon tells her to wash up, and she asks when he woke up. He jokes that she probably would have run away if he'd been sleeping. She agrees and says she'll go take a shower. After her shower, Seokheon offers to dry her hair for her. Once her hair is dry, she asks about her clothes. He casually tells her he threw them away. Concerned, she asks how she's going to go outside. Seokheon then shows her the receipt for the money he gave her for the nursery construction. He asks if she's going to press send and come with him, or if she's going to go back to Dokyeong and work on rebuilding the nursery herself. He warns her that every time she rebuilds it, it'll just burn down again. He reminds her that he's able to avoid punishment for it. He suggests that if he's not feeling that method anymore, he could always switch to more clever tactics. He questions if she's okay with the baby too, even though it may not be his. Yeonwoo considers his words, feeling torn between her options. In the end, she presses send, sealing the deal and making a difficult decision about her future. Seokheon grabs Yeonwoo's hand and says they are going to Seoul. She tells him to hold on for a sec, at least let her tidy up her place before they leave. He calls Ms. Park to go to Yeonwoo's one-room apartment, toss out all her stuff, and hire a cleaner. Yeonwoo mentions she has some things she wants to take back, lists them, and he says he'll tell Ms. Park to bring everything. As Yeonwoo continues chatting, Seokheon unexpectedly snaps at her, catching her off guard. She simply lets out a sigh, giving him a smile as he storms off. Meanwhile, back in Seoul, Seokheon takes Yeonwoo to meet his grandfather, who seems puzzled about her long absence. Yeonwoo quickly apologizes, explaining the situation. Grandpa Lee then suggests they go grab something to eat, wanting to catch up. Meanwhile, Jonghae notices Yeonwoo's presence and can't shake off the feeling that something isn't quite right. Causing her to frown inwardly, Jonghae casually asks Seokheon how his business trip went, never expecting him to return with Yeonwoo. Seokheon replies that thankfully, the trip was a success. At the dining table, while they all munch away and Grandpa Lee chats with Yeonwoo, Seokheon drops the bombshell: Yeonwoo is pregnant. Everyone's jaws drop in surprise. Grandpa Lee turns to Yeonwoo, asking if it's true and wondering if she met someone special during her travels. He's convinced she's found a great person, and will soon have a happy family. Curiously, he inquires about the father, to which Seokheon steps in, proudly claiming to be the dad. Yeonwoo suddenly shouts at Seokheon, admitting to herself that she hadn't planned on telling Grandpa, because she didn't want to disappoint him. Jonghae chimes in, expressing her disbelief at everything she's just heard, insisting they shouldn't be joking about such serious matters. Seokheon defends himself, asking why he would joke about something like this. He pulls Yeonwoo in closer, proudly stating that she's carrying his child and starting to show. Jonghae still thinks it's all ridiculous, especially since Yeonwoo shows up out of the blue with news like this. As they continue talking, Grandpa suddenly yells, declaring that's enough. Seokheon quickly adds that startling Yeonwoo isn't good for the baby. Grandpa insists that Yeonwoo should tell him the truth herself. Seokheon affirms that he's telling the truth and declares his intention to marry her. Grandpa stands up, expressing that he's not going to scold her right now, as he has a lot on his mind. He suggests they continue the conversation tomorrow when everyone has a clear head. Yeonwoo starts crying, apologizing, but Grandpa reassures her that it's okay. Yeonwoo angrily yells at Seokheon, calling him crazy and questioning what he was thinking. Seokheon responds with humor, saying he's flattered by the compliment. He explains that he brought her here because he intends to marry her, so the baby would be his anyway. Yeonwoo is incredulous, asking if he's really going to act like everything's fine, especially after seeing how pale Grandpa got earlier. Seokheon retorts, questioning if Grandpa's reaction means they should pretend nothing happened between them. Yeonwoo insists that even if something did happen, they should be pretending it never did. He steps closer to her, urging her to listen. Seokheon admits he brought her here even though she's carrying someone else's child. He warns her that if she doesn't want people talking, she should keep quiet and follow his lead. He confesses he still feels overwhelmed by the thought of this child inside her, not even knowing its gender. Yeonwoo, feeling scared, asks if he's really crazy. Seokheon replies, saying yes, he's crazy about her, to the point where he's even accepting another man's child. He thinks to himself that Grandpa won't kick Yeonwoo out, and with him excited for his great-grandchild, she won't be able to leave either. Seokheon tells Yeonwoo to look at him, leaning in and insisting she accept him as her man since he's accepting her baby. Yeonwoo protests, asking why he's doing this to her. He touches her belly, claiming he's the baby's father, and then touches her, saying yesterday wasn't enough to satisfy him. Yeonwoo, blushing, asks what he means. He declares he's the only one who can touch her now. The next day, Yeonwoo thinks to herself that last night was too intense, her whole body is sore. Seokheon walks in, saying he doesn't want food spilling on the bed. He feeds her as she sits up, but after a while, she says she's not hungry anymore. He insists she should have just one more bite, and then she goes back to sleep. Seokheon heads to the kitchen to put the plate away, and finds Grandpa there. Grandpa says they need to talk. Seokheon admits he initiated it, and Grandpa acknowledges that. Then, he asks if Seokheon forced himself on Yeonwoo. Seokheon denies forcing her, but he admits Yeonwoo has felt guilty about it for a while now, almost 3 years. Grandpa scolds Seokheon, saying he should be ashamed of himself. Seokheon argues that the only way to make Yeonwoo feel better is for him to accept both of them and marry her. Seokheon proposes scheduling the wedding ASAP before Yeonwoo's condition becomes more obvious, but Grandpa disagrees. He refuses, saying he can't face Mr. Seo if they rush into a shotgun wedding. He doesn't want Yeonwoo to have to prepare for a wedding while she's in this state, and he won't settle for a shabby wedding for someone he considers like a granddaughter. Instead, he insists on waiting until after Yeonwoo gives birth and recovers before having a proper wedding. Seokheon agrees to follow Grandpa's wishes. After chatting for a bit, Grandpa suggests that Seokheon should take on the role of vice president before becoming a father. He clarifies that it's not because he's proud of him already, but because he wants Yeonwoo and their child to feel respected. Grandpa advises Seokheon to always treat Yeonwoo well. Seokheon agrees and heads out. Grandpa reflects that anything can be good news if you choose to see it that way. Grandpa tells Jonghae to take Yeonwoo and Seokheon's birth details to the fortune teller Kyalam in Hanam-dong. He wants to find the perfect wedding date for them. Since Yeonwoo will likely have the baby in early winter, they should aim for a date next year to give her enough time to recover. Seokheon is also getting promoted to vice president soon, so he'll need a year to prepare for the wedding. Grandpa assures Jonghae that she's just being cautious, but she shouldn't stress about being a tough mother-in-law to Yeonwoo. After all, she never had to go through something like this herself. Jonghae agrees to find them a date for the wedding. Deep down, she feels frustrated, thinking she didn't spend years achieving her research goals just to end up in this situation. So he goes to Grandpa and explains that Yeonwoo isn't feeling well, she's exhausted. Grandpa quickly calls Dr. Jang, while instructing the maids to prepare some porridge for her. Jonghae silently wishes Yeonwoo and everyone else would just disappear. Dr. Jang decides to give Yeonwoo an 4 to help her feel better. Grandpa informs him that Yeonwoo is going to marry Seokheon, which surprises Dr. Jang. Grandpa expresses how much he adores Yeonwoo, wishing she was his actual grandchild. He figures Seokheon must feel the same way about her. Dr. Jang mentions the burns Yeonwoo has, and Grandpa silently resolves to always support her, even until his last breath. As he had always wanted to find her a good partner. 2 months fly by, and suddenly it's summer. Yeonwoo didn't expect Grandpa to be this accepting. She wishes she had been honest with him from the start if she knew he'd be okay with it. The days have been surprisingly comfortable, thanks to Grandpa's support. However, the baby's father left on a business trip to Vietnam 10 days ago. Despite everything being great thanks to Grandpa, Yeonwoo knows she should probably come clean about the truth soon. Grandpa walks in, and they start chatting about orchids and food. Jonggae watches them, feeling jealous and angry. Grandpa reminds Yeonwoo that he promised to move some stocks under her name at the end of last year. He's been growing the inheritance that Mr. Seo left her, and it's now worth quite a bit. Plus, he's added some more to it. His lawyer will be here soon to explain everything in detail. He just needs Yeonwoo to sign a few papers. Yeonwoo hesitates at first, but eventually agrees. Jonggae thinks to herself that she hasn't been able to snag a single share of Mari Construction stocks. Suddenly, Grandpa interrupts her thoughts, asking why she isn't eating anything. She quickly responds, saying she is. Grandfather Lee tells Jonggae not to waste her food. He thinks to himself that she deserves to be treated the same way she treats others because that's how karma works. He is sure he gave her a chance before. He remembers telling her to leave his son alone, but she acts like she doesn't understand. He tells her that Myung-hun's wife is pregnant with their second child and that she should let him go so he can focus on his family. He says if she agrees, he'll give her money or anything else she needs. However, Jonggae chooses his son over the money Grandfather Lee offers. Not long after that day, Myung-hun's wife collapses. At that moment, she is holding the photos Jonggae sent her, showing her husband's cheating and the child on the way because of it. The shock Jonggae gives her causes her to have a miscarriage. Myung-hun's wife's depression gets worse and she soon dies. After that, Jonggae moves into his house right away, as if to prove a point. Yeonwoo smiles as she peels apples for Grandpa Lee. She thinks of her own grandpa while she peels. She tells Grandpa Lee that she visited her grandfather's grave last winter, but if Grandpa Lee wants to go, she'll come along. He says that sounds good and mentions he has to tell her grandpa about her and Seokheon getting married. Maybe her grandpa is willing to give his precious granddaughter to their family because of that incident. Yeonwoo asks what incident he's talking about. Grandpa Lee mentions it happened the year Yeonwoo moved out. They started taking land in Hwasong to build an industrial area, and unfortunately, it included Mr. Seo's burial site. With his own company to manage, Grandpa Lee wasn't interested in an industrial area in the countryside. But maybe Seokheon came across it while watching stock market trends and found an article about it. He told Grandpa Lee they needed to stop it. He realizes she isn't aware. Seokheon lost both his mother and grandmother who raised him, didn't he? Maybe that's why he understands the comfort even a simple grave can bring to those left behind. As soon as he joined Mari Construction, he insisted on taking over the business department. Grandpa Lee thought he must have had his reasons and made him the director. Next thing he knows, Seokheon announces his new position to all the news companies. Initially, Grandpa Lee thought Seokheon was more ambitious than he realized. But it turns out, Seokheon just needed the title to have influence over the decisions of the older people in power in Korea. Sure, lots of factories have come into the area and it has changed a lot. But isn't that better than her hometown disappearing forever? Even Grandpa Lee admits that Seokheon did a great job back then. Recently, he flew to Vietnam right after approving of the wedding and said the trip would be great for his wife. As Grandpa Lee and Yeonwoo talk, she wonders if she's ever given enough of her heart to Seokheon. Her baby kicks, and she thinks she should tell him the truth, at least for the baby's sake. She feels it's time to be honest with him. Jonggae goes to see her husband and overhears him with another woman, being intimate. She thinks to herself that it hasn't been long since his scandal with sponsoring an actress. She walks in and tells the woman she's the man's wife. She says she needs to talk to him right now, so the woman should come back in 2 hours or whenever. The girl leaves. Her husband jokes that things were just getting good, but she tells him to put on some clothes already. She doesn't want to see an old man's naked body. He asks her why she's here. If she's just here to say something, she should say it and go. After he puts on his robe, he tells her not to lecture him like she's his mom because it's annoying. She should say what she needs to and leave. She tells him that Seokheon is being promoted to vice president. She says his recent trip to Vietnam is just a way to show results and justify the promotion. He exclaims that Seokheon hasn't even turned 40 yet. Is his father crazy? Jonghae reminds him to think about how much his father cared for him, sticking by him until the very end. He shouts for her to shut up, expressing his fear that if Seokheon gets promoted to vice president, he'll never be able to reclaim his position. She calmly points out that once their baby arrives, his influence will diminish greatly. He angrily crumples a water bottle in his hand, scoffing at the fact that some unknown woman getting pregnant could change everything. Despite his outburst, Jonghae begins to smile. Where Seokheon is, Cheon tells him he's planning to stop by the duty-free shops. Lee Ki-young, Yeonwoo's former co-worker, mentions that Mr. Cheon's wife is pregnant with their second child, so he's likely buying her a present. Seokheon asks what people usually get for a pregnant woman. Ki-young replies that it's true Seokheon is expecting a child with Yeonwoo. He admits it's a bit late to say this, but he's really glad things worked out between them. The truth is, Yeonwoo used to struggle with her colleagues. Seokheon turns to Ki-young, asking what he means by that. Ki-young admits he didn't find out about this until much later. Apparently, other co-workers used to gossip about Yeonwoo behind her back and say mean things about her. Rumors about her and Seokheon being together had been going around for a while, which must have really hurt her feelings. Her co-workers even made a group chat without including her, just to discuss whether the rumors were true or not. Since Ki-young was part of Seokheon's department, he never got invited to that secret chat. When he finally heard the whole story, he realized how tough it must have been for Yeonwoo with so many people talking badly about her. Seokheon responds that they should also stop by the duty-free shops, even if they have to delay their flight for it. In the duty-free shop, as Seokheon shops, he thinks to himself that shopping like this isn't too bad. Meanwhile, at the chairman's residence, Yeonwoo asks Grandpa Lee why he's dressed so nicely. He tells her he has to go to the office to receive a report. Today is the day Seokheon is supposed to return. Grandpa Lee mentions he's planning to have Seokheon handle interviews from now on. This way, when their baby is born, the child can look up to Seokheon and say how amazing his dad is. Yeonwoo smiles warmly at the thought. She mentions she's going for a 3D ultrasound to check on the baby. They told her she'll see the baby's features in detail. He comments that they didn't have that when Seokheon's mom was pregnant with him. Yeonwoo thinks to herself that she needs to tell the truth for the sake of the whole family. She tells Grandpa Lee to have a safe trip. He adds that she should message him the 3D ultrasound file when it's ready. Yeonwoo goes to the hospital for the ultrasound and sees her baby in good shape. Looking at the picture, she thinks to herself that he looks just like his dad. Afterward, she asks her driver to take her to the department store. At the store, Eun-jong warmly greets Yeonwoo, showing her a lot of respect as her personal shopper. Yeonwoo explains she's there to buy a gift for her husband. Eun-jong asks what the occasion is, and Yeonwoo replies it's not really for a special event, but she wants to give him something he can wear often. They decide on a tie, and Yeonwoo places the baby picture inside the box with the tie. In the car, Yeonwoo thinks to herself that she'll tell him the truth as soon as she gives him the gift. When she arrives home, Jonghae asks about her doctor's appointment and if they said the baby is healthy. Yeonwoo confirms everything went well and shows her the ultrasound video. Yeonwoo calls her mother and mentions she stopped by the department store earlier. The personal shopper showed her a summer cardigan that she thought would suit her mother better, so she bought one for her. Jonghae says she's enjoying everything now that she's a part of the family too. She asks Yeonwoo if she could go somewhere in her place today. She has plans with some other wives at the gallery this evening. Since Yeonwoo is now part of the family, she should start fulfilling her role here. It'll be a good opportunity for her to bond with Seokheon's father too. Yeonwoo agrees, saying she'll leave her bag upstairs and come down right away. Jonghae smirks and says it sounds like a plan. Jonghae had informed Yeonwoo that Seokheon's father is unwell and will be in bed. All Yeonwoo needs to do is make sure he takes his medicine and cook his dinner. As Yeonwoo rings the doorbell, she tells herself she's committed to being part of this family now. Entering the house, she sees him sitting down and notices the woman Jonghae mentioned earlier, in a compromising position with him. Immediately, Yeonwoo thinks she needs to leave before they spot her. Just then, he notices her presence. He asks if she's Seokheon's fiancée, and she bows, introducing herself politely. He mentions he heard she's here to bring him food because he's sick, so she should prepare it for him. Heading to the kitchen, she finds it in a mess and smelling bad. Seokheon's father shouts, reminding her he asked for the food to be ready. In her mind, she sighs, realizing she needs to clean up the kitchen first before she can start cooking. After she finishes cooking and serves him, he asks for another bowl and tells his mistress to come and eat with him. Yeonwoo thinks to herself that her mother said he'd be sick in bed, so she's confused about what's happening. As the lady comes out to eat, Yeonwoo realizes inwardly that she's the actress she saw on TV. She remembers seeing an article that mentioned the actress was married. Lady compliments Seokheon's father on the food from his house, and he replies that the housekeepers have been with them for a while and know how to cook well. As they continue talking, Yeonwoo thinks to herself that they seem to know a lot about each other's homes. Could they really be in the kind of relationship she's imagining? Feeling uncomfortable, she wants to leave. Just then, Seokheon's father asks Yeonwoo to clean up the rest of the kitchen too because the smell is bothering him. Yeonwoo sighs inwardly, thinking it's better than standing idly by. As she watches them eat, the father and his mistress start speaking badly about Yeonwoo. She thinks to herself that nothing good will come from staying here any longer. Once they finish eating, she plans to quickly clean up and leave. While packing the remaining plates, the father suddenly touches Yeonwoo's stomach, causing her to startle. He asks if a father-in-law can't touch his pregnant daughter-in-law's stomach, and inquires how far along she is. She replies she's 6 months pregnant. In her mind, she feels terrible. It seems like her baby and she are nothing more than objects to him. She realizes he has no respect for others, so she decides it's pointless to respond to him. He mentions he heard she's from a poor family, wondering if that's why her manners are lacking. He asks if she doesn't know how to respond when an elder asks her a question. His mistress tries to intervene, saying she's pregnant, but he tells her to be quiet and fetch him a glass of whiskey. He pours himself a drink and insists Yeonwoo should have one too. She declines, saying she can't drink. He comments that she's refusing a drink from her father-in-law, and mentions this is their first formal meeting. His mistress chimes in, saying he's being too harsh and predicts that the baby in Yeonwoo's womb will be the future successor of Mari construction. This angers him, and he declares that no one will become the successor without his permission. He forcefully tries to shove the drink into Yeonwoo's mouth, but she refuses, causing the glass to break on the floor. Yeonwoo quickly runs away. He calls Jonghae and informs her that he scared Yeonwoo a bit and made her flee. He instructs Jonghae to handle the situation from here on out. If Yeonwoo doesn't cooperate, he tells Jonghae to send her over a few more times. After the call, his mistress asks if he's trying to reconcile with his wife. He replies, using a metaphor, that he doesn't bother feeding a fish he's already caught. In the Mari interview room, Seokheon is sitting with his grandfather and some employees. He gazes at Jung Mi-hyun, the manager of PR Team 2, recalling what Ki-young had mentioned about her being a gossip spreader. The interview goes smoothly from start to finish. Grandpa Lee tells Seokheon he's leaving early and hints there's a nice surprise waiting for him at home. Once Grandpa leaves, Seokheon asks Ms. Park to send all the items he bought at the duty-free shops to the department store for gift wrapping. Since his wife is expecting a son, he suggests wrapping them in blue, making sure other employees hear. He then invites Manager Choi to have dinner with him and his wife, mentioning that his wife knows Manager Choi. The employees gossip about how much Seokheon must love his wife. Mi-hyun thinks to herself that it can't be true. Someone as unfortunate as Yeonwoo couldn't possibly be in Seokheon's league. When he returns home, he can't find Yeonwoo at first. He hears the shower running and assumes she's inside. While looking around, he notices her phone and sees that she's still in contact with Dokyong. Looking through their messages, Seokheon sees that Yeonwoo plans to send a gift to congratulate Dokyong for a big deal. Then he notices the box Yeonwoo bought for him earlier, with the ultrasound picture inside. Just as he's looking at it, Yeonwoo comes out of the bathroom. She rushes over to him with a smile, saying she's been waiting for him all day. She's happy that he saw the photo and asks why he's crumpling it up. Seokheon apologizes, asking if he interrupted her from sending the photo to her baby daddy. Confused, Yeonwoo asks him what he means. Seokheon tosses the ultrasound photo onto the ground, causing Yeonwoo to exclaim that it's all wrinkled up. She asks him what's wrong, explaining that the tie isn't for Dokyong but for him, and the ultrasound photo was also meant for him. Seokheon dismisses her, saying she's not fooling anyone with that story. Yeonwoo insists it's the truth, that she prepared everything for him. He reacts by throwing her phone on the floor. She questions his actions, but he begins to force himself on her, telling her she won't breastfeed their baby and should be ready to get pregnant again right away. After they finish, Yeonwoo thinks to herself that normally he would gently clean her off afterward, but this time he immediately went to the shower. In the past, she would have stayed quiet and not tried to clarify things. But now, even if it's just for the baby's sake, she feels she needs to clear things up and set the record straight. As Seokheon comes out of the shower looking upset, Yeonwoo tells him sincerely that she really bought the tie for him. He warns her not to provoke him, but she insists she's telling the truth. She suggests he ask the personal shopper at the department store for confirmation. Seokheon dismisses her, saying the personal shopper is supposed to be on her side. Yeonwoo pleads with him, explaining she had hopes 3D ultrasound today, and wanted to show him the baby's face. He responds coldly, stating that she knows he's only accepting the baby because she's carrying it, not because he wants to. He declares forcefully that he's making her marry him, no matter how much she despises it. He insists she'll end up being his wife. As tears roll down her cheeks, Yeonwoo thinks to herself that she was just trying to be honest with him about everything. Outside, Jonghae overhears their conversation and thinks to herself that she didn't realize he was pressuring Yeonwoo to marry him. She muses that things have suddenly become very intriguing. The next day, Yeonwoo tells Seokheon that breakfast is ready. She notices he's wearing the tie she bought for him and thinks to herself that he probably doesn't realize it's the one she chose. Yeonwoo helps him adjust the tie before they go outside together to see him off for work. Seokheon touches her belly and feels the baby move. Yeonwoo remarks that the baby must be wishing him a good day at work. He kisses her and suggests she go to the den room on the second floor later. He brought her some things from his recent business trip. Yeonwoo goes to check out the numerous gifts Seokheon brought for her. She tells her baby that daddy isn't a bad person, he was just really upset yesterday. Yeonwoo doesn't believe that's how he truly feels, especially seeing all the thoughtful things he bought for them during his business trip. She decides she'll fix everything and clear up any misunderstandings so that Hope can feel completely loved again, just like before. Jonghae searches for Yeonwoo and instructs the maids not to come upstairs until she returns. Once in Yeonwoo's room, she suggests they have a chat. She mentions overhearing their conversation yesterday, and notes that it doesn't seem like Yeonwoo and Seokheon are getting along. Jonghae points out that she's seen Seokheon's father and must realize that men who have everything often face many temptations. Men's hearts are easily swayed, she explains, because what woman wouldn't be drawn to a wealthy man? It's no wonder men often stray from their commitments. Yeonwoo expresses confusion, saying she doesn't understand what Jonghae means. Jonghae tells Yeonwoo that they say womanizing runs in the family. She speculates that Chairman Lee might have also been unfaithful to his wife. It's a well-known fact that businessmen from his generation often have hidden secrets. Yeonwoo gets upset and yells that it's a big leap for Jonghae to say such things. Jonghae continues, suggesting that at 6 months, it wouldn't harm Yeonwoo's body to lose the baby. She says this out of sympathy as a fellow woman. Doesn't Yeonwoo want to live freely instead of having Seokheon's baby and potentially ending up like his birth mother? She tells Yeonwoo that even if she has this child, he's destined to face a tough life like Seokheon or her daughter Sujin. Based on her own experience, being a wife in this family is challenging, and the children born into it are fated to suffer and endure pain. Yeonwoo interrupts, insisting that Seokheon and Sujin's suffering resulted from the mistakes made by the adults, their father, herself, and Seokheon's mother, who were caught in the middle. It's because of them that Seokheon and Sujin had to endure misery. Yeonwoo refuses to let her child live a similar life of hardship. Jonghae tells Yeonwoo that Seokheon seemed really upset with her yesterday. She believes men always obsess over things they can't have. Does Yeonwoo really think Seokheon will still hold onto her once she has the baby and becomes his full wife? Yeonwoo responds, saying Jonghae only asks that because she doesn't understand the kind of person Seokheon is. She believes Seokheon acted that way yesterday due to a minor argument, and he isn't someone who would easily change his feelings. Jonghae tells Yeonwoo that despite knowing the difficult lives Seokheon and Sujin have lived, and seeing the life their father leads now, she still wants to dive into this challenging situation. Perhaps they are more alike than she realized, both using their children to pursue wealth and status in this household. Yeonwoo vehemently denies this, saying she's not like that and will never be. Jonghae counters, saying only time will reveal the truth. Internally, Yeonwoo resolves never to let Hope be unhappy. Meanwhile, Jonghae admits to herself that she initially aimed for a civil conversation to persuade Yeonwoo to leave, but now feels compelled to find a way to end Yeonwoo's pregnancy before it's too late. Before Yeonwoo could clarify the truth about the baby's father, Seokheon embarked on another lengthy business trip to Vietnam. As a result, another month passed with the secret still hidden. However, the baby continued to grow healthily as Yeonwoo entered her 7th month of pregnancy. Today, Seokheon is expected to return. Grandfather Lee suggests they meet later and have dinner at the hotel in Jangcheong-dong. There's something special he requested from Vietnam, which Seokheon will bring back. Yeonwoo is asked to have him drop it off at one of the hotel shops so they can enjoy a nice date together. As Yeonwoo hurries off to get dressed, Jonghae leans in towards Grandpa Lee with a curious expression and asks him about the special request he made for Seokheon to bring back from Vietnam. He chuckles softly and explains that they are going to start planning the wedding once Yeonwoo gives birth, so he needs to begin preparing the perfect jewelry for the occasion. Seokheon is bringing back some exquisite gems from the Luc Yen district in Vietnam, which Grandpa Lee believes will be cherished by Yeonwoo. Jonghae nods thoughtfully, but inwardly, she feels a twinge of concern. She knows that if she continues to let things unfold without interference, Seokheon will soon prioritize Yeonwoo over her. It's becoming clear that she can't simply stand by and watch this situation develop any longer. She needs to take decisive action to protect her own interests. In Jangcheong Hotel, Yeonwoo's face lights up with a smile as she happily calls out Seokheon's name. Soft murmurs ripple through the nearby crowd as he swiftly pulls her into a warm embrace. She beams up at him, her eyes sparkling with affection, and asks how her new dress looks on her, mentioning that she had just bought it. Seokheon's gaze lingers admiringly on her, and he replies with a heartfelt compliment, telling her she looks absolutely stunning and amazing. Intrigued by what grandfather had asked Seokheon to bring back from Vietnam, Yeonwoo leans in a little closer and asks with curiosity dancing in her eyes. Seokheon, his expression playful yet secretive, reveals that he's already arranged for the item to be delivered, but suggests that it's something she should experience firsthand to fully appreciate. They arrive at the jewelry store where Yeonwoo sees a collection of top-quality gems and high-end jewelry mined in Vietnam. Among them is a stunning ruby, deep red in color and exceptionally clear, a rare and precious stone. They plan to use it for crafting a special piece of jewelry. Yeonwoo also shows the jeweler her late grandmother-in-law's ring that they want to reset to look brand new before giving it to her. Yeonwoo then shows the jeweler the ring Seokheon gave her when he proposed. At that time, they had to keep their relationship secret. Seokheon is surprised when she refers to him as her husband. She explains that she hasn't been wearing the ring lately because her fingers have been swollen from pregnancy, but the size should still be perfect. Yeonwoo tells the jeweler she'd prefer to wear Seokheon's mother's ring without resetting it, just cleaned up nicely. Since it's a ring that meant a lot to Seokheon's precious mother, she feels it would be more meaningful to wear it as it is. She looks at Seokheon and asks for his opinion, calling him honey. He replies with a casual, whatever you want. Seokheon wonders to himself why Yeonwoo is acting differently today, first calling him her husband and now honey. He realizes he's starting to understand how caring husbands must feel. As Seokheon and Yeonwoo sit together enjoying their drinks, he asks if there's anything else she wants besides the jewelry, offering to buy it for her. Yeonwoo mentions she won't wear the ruby often. After chatting for a while, she gently brings up that he didn't bring any gifts this time. She's been using the things he got her last time and enjoyed them. Seokheon explains he was busy arranging the gem and didn't have time to shop. He asks if she's disappointed, and she admits she is. He then asks if there's something specific she wants, and she replies that she needs his attention. Internally, Yeonwoo resolves that she promised herself to reveal the truth about the baby's father once he returned. Today, she's determined to tell him no matter what. As they eat, Yeonwoo mentions she's a bit late in saying this, but everything he bought her last time was exactly what she needed. She asks if she can share a secret, the lingerie he bought her then, she's actually wearing it right now because it's so comfortable. If she had known earlier, she would have bought maternity lingerie a long time ago. Anyway, since he showed her such a rare gem today, she forgives him for not bringing anything back this time. They decide to head to their room. Inside, he starts kissing her and tells her how much he missed her while he was away. She tells him to go brush his teeth since they just finished eating. As he leaves, she thinks to herself that this time, she brought evidence he can trust. Once he finds out he's the baby's father, he'll be happy, right? She really hopes so. She remembers when Grandfather Lee told her how much Seokheon cares for her, even though he would never admit it openly. Seokheon returns and starts kissing her passionately. He doesn't want to stop, but she thinks to herself that she has something more important to tell him than just enjoying this moment. He lifts her up and gently places her on the bed. She asks him if she looks fat, and he assures her that she's as beautiful as ever. They begin to get intimate. Seokheon held back at first, worried about Yeonwoo's pregnancy, but she assured him it was okay. She playfully told him not to restrain himself, and insisted on being on top of him. Yeonwoo teasingly scolded him for getting her so worked up, while he was still dressed, and declared she was going to punish him for it. Despite wanting to discuss something important with him, they ended up getting intimate again in the moment. Afterward, as they lay together, Yeonwoo gently caressed Seokheon's face and jokingly referred to him as Hope's dad. She told him that even though he had initially doubted the baby's paternity, he didn't seem bothered seeing her with her growing belly. Seokheon admitted that he had struggled with the idea of the baby at first, but now his feelings were different because of his deep love for her. He genuinely cared about the baby's health and wanted to see Yeonwoo smiling with happiness. If the baby indeed belonged to her, he believed he could learn to love their child too. Then she asks him to fetch a notebook from beside him to help her. It's Hope's first ultrasound, showing she is 17 weeks and 3 days pregnant. Pregnancy is counted from the end of her last period, meaning the baby was conceived shortly after her period ended on December 1st, which was before she left. He's Seokheon's child. They sit up, and Yeonwoo apologizes for lying to him. She's unsure if he'll believe her, but she's never lived with Dokyeong, and they've never been together like that. She's sorry for deceiving and hurting him. Seokheon reassures her that Hope is his child, and she lied about it being Dokyeong's, because she was scared of him, or didn't want to return to him. She explains that at the time, she thought lying was the best option. She didn't realize how much he was trying to gain acceptance for their relationship. She deceived him for her own convenience, and she's truly sorry. He asks about the baby's nickname, Hope. She tells him after her first appointment at 17 weeks, she promised herself to make a good life for both of them. The baby gave her strength to keep going, so she named him Hope. She asks him to please say something, whether he wants her to beg for forgiveness for lying. He tells her not to. He admits he must have been the worst guy around for her to feel like she had to run away while carrying his child. He's been cursing his father all his life for being a terrible person, but now he realizes he might be just as bad. She asks if her lying for 3 months doesn't make him resent her or get angry, and he says he's not mad at her. He's grappling with why he didn't see the obvious truth earlier. Perhaps he didn't put in enough effort to build trust with her so she could openly share everything. If only he had assured her to wait and promised to swiftly seek his grandfather's approval for their relationship, she wouldn't have felt compelled to deceive him for such a long time. He should have prioritized gaining his grandfather's acceptance right from the beginning of their relationship instead of prolonging it for 2 years. The root of the problem lies with him from the very start, teach him how to love, and he fully accepts responsibility. They'll figure out together what it means to love someone, acknowledging that they should be the one asking for her forgiveness. Later that night, he sincerely apologizes for his actions. She realizes she's been here with Seokheon before. It was several years ago on their 1-year anniversary. Seokheon had brought wine, and he promised to tell his grandfather about them once they settled at work. She had told him she didn't want to be his secret anymore, that she was tired, and they should break up because what they had wasn't love, just an immoral desire. Yeonwoo thinks to herself that maybe it's okay to really try loving this time, because she now has hope to fix things between them. After she told Seokheon the truth, their once rocky relationship changed. Grandfather Lee asks her if something is wrong with Seokheon, because he looks unusually peaceful these days. Yeonwoo thinks to herself that if she had known the truth would make him feel this much better, she would have told him sooner. Grandfather Lee and Yeonwoo go outside to see if Seokheon is doing a good job building a shelf for the orchid garden. Seokheon holds Yeonwoo and tells her she should be inside with the AC on. He asks why she came out. She says she wanted to check if he was doing a good job. He tells her to go back inside, because she's more likely to feel overheated when she's pregnant. He insists she should go back inside. Grandfather Lee jokes that Seokheon doesn't care about him, too. Grandfather Lee and Seokheon agree to go out to buy some things for the shelf. Seokheon tells Yeonwoo to go back inside so her feet don't swell. Jonghae watches them from inside the house, feeling angry. She wonders what's so special about Yeonwoo. Yeonwoo's current life is exactly what Jonghae always wanted. Even Jonghae wasn't allowed to have the ring that was given to Yeonwoo. Just then, Yeonwoo comes in and asks Jonghae if she's been in the living room this whole time. She says she's going to rest upstairs for a bit, but she'll come down before it's time to prepare dinner. Jonghae angrily asks if she's always been like this, pretending to be so innocent in front of everyone with her doe eyes. She accuses Yeonwoo of secretly trying to manipulate the chairman and push her aside. Yeonwoo, taken aback, asks what she means by that. Jonghae says she doesn't particularly like her, but how could she go off and tell the chairman something like that? She says Yeonwoo backed her into a corner, and even got herself pregnant despite all her warnings not to do anything so immoral. She insults Yeonwoo, saying she's finally settled herself into her house now. Yeonwoo calls her mother, but Jonghae yells, saying she told her not to call her that. She accuses Yeonwoo of trying to deceive her by acting like her daughter-in-law. Yeonwoo yells, calling Jonghae by her name, and tells her to stop with the delusions. She says it's enough and that Jonghae needs to get some professional help. Jonghae shouts back, asking if Yeonwoo is calling her a crazy freak. She accuses Yeonwoo of hiding back then to deceive her. She says she told her to end things with Seokheon, but Yeonwoo got pregnant and ran away until it was too late. Yeonwoo insists that's not what happened. Jonghae says Yeonwoo clearly waited until there was nothing Chairman Lee could do but accept her baby. Yeonwoo tells Jonghae that her victim mentality is only tormenting her more and keeping her from seeing the truth, so she should please stop. Yeonwoo turns to go upstairs, but Jonghae grabs her hand and demands how dare she talk to her like that. Jonghae thinks to herself that she needs Yeonwoo to fall on her stomach and tries to shove her down. The maid comes in, asking what's going on, and sees Yeonwoo on the ground in pain. Jonghae pretends to help and tells the maid to leave it to her. She says it's better to wait for the EMTs and tells the maid to hurry up and call 119. The ambulance arrives, and the maid follows Yeonwoo, while Jonghae stays home to tell Seokheon and grandfather Lee what happened. Inside the house, Jonghae wonders if Yeonwoo will tell them what really happened. She concludes that Yeonwoo won't tell, given her personality. Jonghae thinks that Yeonwoo is a good girl, and keeping quiet is the best way to maintain peace in the family. If Yeonwoo doesn't keep quiet, Jonghae won't let her off easy. She convinces herself that this is all Yeonwoo's fault. In the ambulance, the maid Musin says Yeonwoo fell down the stairs. Yeonwoo asks Musin to call her husband and tell him to come to the hospital. Inwardly, Yeonwoo decides she can't tolerate being bullied and put in danger anymore. She has to tell everyone the truth. Musin quickly calls Seokheon to come to the hospital. While at the store, Seokheon and grandfather Lee talk. Seokheon asks how long he's known about him and Yeonwoo, mentioning it wouldn't have been so tough on her if he had accepted them earlier. Grandfather Lee agrees, saying everyone's life situation is different, like bowls of different sizes. He explains that even if he tried to force things into a bowl, it could break. He did find out about them early on and accepted it, but he stopped asking for updates soon after. He believed that if their relationship was meant to be, he would learn about it in due time. If not, they would go their separate ways. Honestly, he always thought it was a shame for someone as sweet and kind as Yeonwoo to be with Seokheon. As they keep talking, Seokheon asks grandfather Lee about Jonghae. He's bothered by how she always looks at Yeonwoo with disdain. Seokheon mentions his father doesn't even live with them, so he dislikes Jonghae staying in their house like a parasite. He thinks he should send her to live separately with his father. If not, he might move out with Yeonwoo. Just then, he gets a call from Musin about Yeonwoo. Seokheon immediately rushes to his car. He quickly tells his grandfather what happened before leaving. At the hospital, the doctor directs them to Yeonwoo's bed, but mentions she's getting an ultrasound, so they've closed the curtains for a moment. Seokheon looks over with a worried expression. In the emergency room at Hankuk University Hospital, Seokheon sees Yeonwoo lying on the bed. He asks her where she's hurt, and then asks the doctor if his wife is okay. The doctor reassures him that the baby is okay, thankfully. She explains that the stress from the fall seems to have caused abdominal pain for Ms. Seo. Her stomach tensed up, causing cramps. The ultrasound showed that the baby is fine. And there haven't been any changes in the length of her cervix or signs of ruptured membranes. However, Ms. Seo does have some external injuries. Looking at Yeonwoo's medical record, the doctor notices she's injured the same ankle that was treated a few years ago. They had the obstetrician come in first because the ultrasound was the top priority, but now she needs to be rushed to orthopedics for her ankle. Just then, Grandpa Lee rushes in, asking Yeonwoo why she's crying and if she's hurt. The doctor assures him not to worry and promises they'll do their best to ensure she's comfortably treated. Yeonwoo tells Grandfather Lee that she wasn't crying because of her hurt ankle, she was just relieved that the baby was okay. She explains that she couldn't feel the baby move after she fell down the stairs, so she was scared something had happened. The doctor says they'll do an X-ray before treating her ankle and then move her to a private VIP room. Yeonwoo agrees and thinks to herself that she hasn't been able to tell them about Jonghae yet. She tells them there's something she needs to share, but there are too many people around, so she'll wait until she's in the room after treatment. They agree to wait until then. Yeonwoo gets a splint on her injured ankle, and since she's pregnant, the doctor suggests she use a wheelchair instead of crutches. Seokheon helps her into the wheelchair and asks if she wants to go outside for some fresh air. She nods yes. Outside, Seokheon asks how her stomach feels. Yeonwoo says the ache is gone, but she still can't feel the baby moving. Seokheon reassures her not to worry, saying everything will be okay. He shares a story from when he was younger about jumping from a balcony with an umbrella and not getting hurt, so he did it again. Finally, hope starts moving, and Yeonwoo feels incredibly happy and relieved. Suddenly, she begins crying uncontrollably. Seokheon asks her what's wrong, if her ankle hurts, or if he did something to upset her. He comforts her, and she tells him she's not crying because of him, or maybe she is. Then, Yeonwoo reveals what she wanted to tell him earlier. She confesses that the truth is Jonghae pushed her down the stairs. Seokheon is shocked to hear this. Yeonwoo explains to Seokheon that Jonghae has known about their relationship for a long time. Jonghae gave her 150 million won to leave Seokheon before she ran away. Yeonwoo didn't have a way to return the money, so it's still sitting unused in her bank account. She tells Seokheon he can check to see she's telling the truth. Seokheon says he doesn't doubt her, but asks if that's why she left him. Yeonwoo clarifies that she didn't leave because of Jonghae, but she did try to leave. Seokheon insists she stop calling Jonghae mother, because she doesn't deserve any title from them. Yeonwoo continues, saying Jonghae thought she would disrupt Seokheon's life, and always disapproved of their relationship. When she returned home, Jonghae claimed Seokheon was only keeping Yeonwoo against her will and suggested Yeonwoo let Hope go, offering to help her leave Seokheon. Seokheon asks Yeonwoo why she didn't tell him all this sooner. Yeonwoo explains that at the time, she wasn't sure what to do. She knew Jonghae didn't like her, but she hoped maybe Jonghae still cared for her as a woman and a fellow mother. Or perhaps it was Jonghae's way of showing pity, considering their long history together. Yeonwoo blames herself for being naive. Seokheon holds Yeonwoo close and thinks to himself that he's furious at Jonghae, but he doesn't want Yeonwoo to see his anger. He can't add to her pain when she's already been through so much. He asks Yeonwoo to tell him everything in detail, and she narrates how it all happened. Seokheon thinks to himself that he can't let Jonghae continue living in the same house as Yeonwoo. He tells Yeonwoo he needs to go home for a while, and she advises him not to confront his stepmother. Inside the hospital room, Jonghae feigns concern for Yeonwoo. She asks if Yeonwoo is okay and grabs her hand, pretending to be worried. She questions if the baby is all right. Seokheon intervenes, grabbing Jonghae's hand and telling her to leave Yeonwoo alone. He pushes Jonghae away, leaving Grandfather Lee confused about what's happening. Seokheon tells Jonghae to never show her face in front of him again. He tells her to leave if she wants to avoid trouble. Jonggae rushes out of the room. Grandfather Lee asks Seokheon to explain what happened. Seokheon agrees, but says he'll do it after he helps lay Yeonwoo down first. Seokheon explains everything to Grandfather Lee, emphasizing that nothing stays hidden in this world, especially when the wrongdoer is still around. He believes Jonggae thinks Yeonwoo is trying to come between her and their family. Seokheon feels she's felt this way ever since Yeonwoo moved in. He tells Grandfather Lee that he has to make a choice now. He can't raise his child around someone like Jonggae, and he won't compromise on this. Grandfather Lee calls his son and tells him he needs to take responsibility for the wife he brought home in the first place. After the call, he asks Seokheon to call Musin or Jongin and have them throw Jonggae's belongings outside. Seokheon insists that he should be the one to kick Jonggae out. He calls Musin and instructs her to throw Jonggae's things out. Musin had also witnessed what Jonggae did. Grandfather Lee also stops sending money to Jonggae and bans her from entering company property. At the house, Musin and Jongin pack Jonggae's belongings into boxes and place them outside the gate. Jonggae walks up to them and asks what they are doing, but they quickly retreat inside and slam the gate shut. Jonggae stares at the boxes, wondering what's inside, and realizes it's her own belongings. She tries calling Musin, but her calls go unanswered. Her husband calls her and asks what she did to make his father kick her out and demand he come to get her. She defiantly responds that she's not leaving. He berates her, saying she always acted like she owned everything, looking down on everyone as if she'd been his wife from the beginning. He criticizes her for not being able to live as an obedient daughter-in-law, calling her foolish. He contrasts her behavior with how she managed to stay in the house despite Seokheon's mother's depression. Jonggae thinks to herself that she believed everything would be fine once she got rid of Seokheon's mother, at least until her death. She never imagined she would be treated this way. Her husband informs her he'll be sending divorce papers soon, telling her to quickly arrange her living situation and keep quiet if she wants to receive an apartment as alimony. Internally, Jonggae is convinced Chairman Lee wouldn't throw her out like this. It's just a misunderstanding that will clear up when he returns. She calls a cab and heads to Gangnam, feeling like she has nothing left. She refuses to let things end like this. Jonggae tried to visit several times, but she was prevented from meeting Yeonwoo. They made sure Yeonwoo never heard about Jonggae's attempts to visit. Eventually, Yeonwoo was discharged from the hospital. Sitting in the car, Yeonwoo thinks to herself that she did wonder if kicking Jonggae out was the right decision, but it was the best choice for Hope. Now, they can finally have peace, right? When they arrive home, Grandfather tells Yeonwoo to use the downstairs room to avoid stairs. He switches rooms with her. Yeonwoo asks about Jonggae, and Grandfather says she hasn't contacted him since she must be very upset. According to the report he received, she went to Myung-hun's apartment in Gangnam, which doesn't surprise him. Yeonwoo thinks to herself that considering her father-in-law's personality, Jonggae is probably having a tough time there too. She can't help but feel a bit sorry for her. Grandfather says things should have been like this from the beginning. They should spend time together, as a couple, especially if they plan to stay together even after he's gone. He doesn't want Yeonwoo to blame herself for Jonggae leaving, and she agrees. Seokheon carries her to bed. As they chat and joke around, Yeonwoo thinks to herself that sometimes she watches Seokheon's sleeping face when she wakes up from his movements in bed. Seokheon mentions that he feels Dokyeong knows Yeonwoo better than he does. Yeonwoo disagrees, saying he doesn't know her that well. Seokheon admits it seems like he still has a lot to learn about her, even after being together for 2 years. He expresses his desire to use this opportunity to get to know her better, starting with understanding her body. Seokheon thinks to himself that he's happy they're having a son. He admits that if they were having a daughter who looked like Yeonwoo, he wouldn't be able to leave her alone. He gently touches the line on Yeonwoo's stomach, and she mentions that all pregnant women get it. He kisses her tummy and cheek, reassuring her that he doesn't know everything about her, but he hopes she won't get mad at him. Seokheon confesses that nothing in the world really scares him, but seeing Yeonwoo angry terrifies him strangely. He expresses his desire to have a second and third child with her because she's lovely and beautiful even while pregnant. He promises to be there for her during morning sickness, and as her stomach grows. From now on, he vows to pay close attention to all the changes her body goes through until she gives birth. As they begin to get intimate, Seokheon mentions feeling a bit sad seeing Yeonwoo take birth control pills regularly. However, he also admits there were times he was glad she took them. Now that she's pregnant, he expresses happiness that she doesn't need to worry about birth control anymore. Yeonwoo tells him they should stop. Later that night, as Yeonwoo sleeps peacefully, Seokheon gently touches her hair and thinks to himself. He plans their future together after their wedding, envisioning a life where he can ensure both her and their child are happy. All he wants is to see her smile every day. Suddenly, his phone rings. It's his father calling. His father asks if it's because of him that his stepmother was thrown out. Seokheon confirms it, and his father demands he take her back immediately. Seokheon questions why he should be responsible for her, but his father insists. An argument ensues, with Seokheon refusing to comply and asserting that he has nothing more to say to his father. His father warns that Seokheon's child will eventually treat him the same way. Seokheon retorts that he looks forward to his child being nothing like his father, who he deems a scumbag. Seokheon tells the maids to make sure Jonghae and his father stay out of the house. He goes to see his grandfather and finds him on the phone with his father. Seokheon asks his grandfather for a day off. He wants to take a vacation. He explains that he's never taken Yeonwoo anywhere nice before, and with their first child on the way, he wants to make it special. Grandfather Lee asks how he plans to take a girl with a broken ankle on a trip. Seokheon insists he'll carry her everywhere. Eventually, Grandfather Lee agrees to give him a week off. Seokheon then rushes to tell Yeonwoo about the trip, and she's pleasantly surprised. Seokheon tells Yeonwoo that she once mentioned wanting to travel, so he promised her a vacation. She inwardly admits she only said that to avoid him. He recalls when she ran away, thinking she was really traveling at first. She asks if he's still mad about it, and he admits he is. He's the type to hold on to grudges. Turning to her, he holds her and says that's why he wants them to go on a trip together. They get into the car, and Yeonwoo asks about work. Seokheon reassures her that grandfather will handle everything. Inwardly, Yeonwoo realizes that's why grandfather gave her some pocket money that morning. He must have given her the money and left early for work in Seokheon's place. He asks Yeonwoo where she wants to go, and she initially thinks he's already planned everything. But he surprises her by saying he wants to take her wherever she desires. He covers her with a blanket and hands her a book on childbirth to help her relax. She asks when he started reading books, and he mentions that Ms. Park left them on his desk. Inwardly, Yeonwoo reflects on how helpful Ms. Park has been. When she suddenly moved back into Seokheon's house after working with Dokyeong at the plant, Ms. Park took care of moving all her things from the studio apartment and brought back everything she needed. Yeonwoo thinks Ms. Park is incredibly kind and sweet. As they continue talking and driving, Yeonwoo thinks to herself that she can't remember the last time she went on a trip. Even when she was alone, she was always so focused on moving forward that she never took the time to stop and explore her surroundings. She supposes Seokheon's way of traveling isn't so bad after all. Meanwhile, there's a car behind them slowly following. The person inside the car makes a call and informs Jonghae of Yeonwoo's whereabouts. Jonghae instructs the person to proceed with the plan. Jonghae thinks to herself that Chairman Lee never allows anyone back once they are out of his sight. She feels it's unfair to be kicked out like this, considering all she has done until now. Does she really think she'll give up easily? No way. She's determined to push them both into a deep hole, just like Seokheon did to her. Seokheon hands Yeonwoo a soda, and she's surprised because she didn't know he drinks soda. He explains it's because of Dokyeong, who teased him about knowing Yeonwoo likes this soda and egg porridge more than he does. Yeonwoo recalls how serious he looked that day, and Seokheon admits he didn't expect to be affected so deeply. He thinks to himself that he has no excuses for his behavior, he was wrong. Yeonwoo apologizes, promising she'll never deceive him again, and expressing her regret. Seokheon apologizes too, assuring her he won't do anything to upset her either. They decide to stop for lunch at the next place on their trip. Seokheon stops at the A-plant nursery, and Yeonwoo is pleasantly surprised. He helps her out of the car, realizing belatedly that she supported Dokyeong's business because she loves plants too. Sura spots them and shouts for Yeonwoo to stay away from the bad man, but then realizes she's in a wheelchair. Yeonwoo laughs and tells Sura not to worry. Dokyeong comes out upon seeing Yeonwoo and Seokheon. He mentions he's been waiting for them since Seokheon said they were coming. Dokyeong chats with Yeonwoo, asking how far along she is. She replies that she'll be 8 months along next week. Back then, Seokheon had called Dokyeong to apologize. He thought at the time that he would repeat his actions 100 times if it meant getting Yeonwoo back. Now, he knows the right thing to do is to make up for his mistakes. Yeonwoo apologizes to Sura for not being able to help physically. Dokyeong thanks Yeonwoo for her financial support, mentioning they've hit the jackpot, with orders pouring in from all over the country. They've even hired new staff to keep up. Dokyeong shows Yeonwoo various types of plants, while Seokheon watches them with jealousy. Sura gives Yeonwoo coconut oil to soothe her itchy tummy and prevent stretch marks during pregnancy. She asks Yeonwoo to send lots of baby pictures when the little one arrives. They all say goodbye to each other, and Seokheon and Yeonwoo hit the road again. Inside the car, Dokyeong sends Yeonwoo a message, mentioning that Seokheon has secured a big order, and might become wealthy soon. Yeonwoo thanks Seokheon for taking her to the nursery. Dokyeong was someone she could lean on during the toughest times in her life, and he still is today. Meeting him again made her realize something important. Seokheon is the person she loves most now. Seokheon tells her he wants to set up a plant department at the company because people these days prefer environments where plants and humans can thrive together. Yeonwoo asks him what he ordered from Dokyeong, and he explains it's a 3-meter-tall vertical garden for the lobby of their new building in East Ikon-dong. Since they'll need expert help to care for the plants, he plans to consult Dokyeong when they start setting up the interior. She thinks to herself that Seokheon has really cleared things up with Dokyeong now. Earlier, she was so anxious when they met, but now she realizes he was just trying to make amends for his past mistakes. She feels grateful and happy about it. Dokyeong stops the car, thinking she needs to use the restroom. She tells him she can manage on her own if he gets her wheelchair, but he insists she doesn't need it. He steps out and carries her himself. They arrive at the restroom, and Seokheon wipes down the toilet seat. Yeonwoo asks him to step outside so she can use the bathroom alone, but he worries someone might be inside and refuses to leave. After some back and forth, he finally turns to face the wall while she uses the toilet. Later, Seokheon helps Yeonwoo back to the car, and then mentions he needs to use the restroom himself. After finishing up, he returns to find Yeonwoo already fast asleep. He quietly notes how she's been sleeping and eating more since becoming pregnant. He gently covers her with a blanket and plants a kiss on her forehead, feeling grateful that their baby seems to be growing well. They've finally reached Grandfather Lee's vacation home, and Yeonwoo wakes up from a nap, realizing they are already there. Seokheon must have been tired from all the driving, she thinks, seeing him asleep beside her. She mentions he looks like a big puppy when he's sleeping. The next day, Yeonwoo takes a stroll near the sea. She hadn't been on a trip in such a long time, she thinks to herself. Later, after Hope is born, she wants to bring him back here with Seokheon. It'll be the three of them. Just then, Seokheon walks over and lifts her up, asking why she's walking alone. He won't allow that. They head to a nice restaurant. Inside, Yeonwoo is glad to see they offer rice cooked in a stone pot. She notices Seokheon's eyes and asks if something is wrong with them. She suggests they buy some eye drops for him later. Seokheon reflects on how she knows so much about him, yet he doesn't even know her favorite things. He wonders what he's been doing all this time. He regrets that despite saying he loves her, he's been acting more like a needy kid. He's struck by the reality of how much she always thinks about him. He thinks to himself that instead of focusing on getting to know Yeonwoo better, he's been too caught up trying to keep her close. Yeonwoo mentions their upcoming marriage and living together, reassuring him they'll have plenty of time to learn about each other. Their food arrives, and Seokheon realizes he's been mistaken about Yeonwoo not liking seafood. He had planned to order something with wild herbs and vegetables, but seeing her enjoy the meal changes his mind. He decides he'll take her on a seafood tour instead. After finishing their meal, Seokheon mentions they should try some sweet and spicy chicken since they are in Seokcho. They buy the chicken, and Yeonwoo suggests they get matching hilarious swimsuits. Seokheon refuses, saying he won't wear one. Yeonwoo then asks for a swimsuit that doesn't have an open back because she wants to cover her scars. They arrive at the hotel and get ready to swim. Eventually, they decide on the hilarious pineapple swimsuit for Yeonwoo. She's concerned that some of her scars might still be visible. Seokheon asks why she's so worried about people seeing them. Yeonwoo explains that she's afraid people, especially kids at the hotel, might be shocked or scared to see her scars. Seokheon helps her cover her back with her hair, and then he hugs her from behind, reassuring her not to worry about it. Seokheon jumps into the pool and splashes water on Yeonwoo, urging her to join him. Some ladies nearby are impressed by Seokheon's appearance. He then playfully lifts Yeonwoo into the pool, inviting her to join in the fun. As they splash around, they talk about the ladies' reaction, and eventually, Seokheon kisses Yeonwoo, sparking some excitement. Yeonwoo teases him and playfully tries to escape, laughing as she runs away. Seokheon quickly catches up to her and hugs her from behind. He thinks to himself how their relationship has changed from intense moments of love and frustration to now feeling comforting and fulfilling just being together. Seokheon notices Yeonwoo's scar showing because of her hair, so he goes to get a towel and gently covers her back with it. While he helps adjust her hair, he admits he doesn't quite understand why she feels the need to hide the scar, but his priority is her comfort. Yeonwoo shares that she actually loves the beach, and would like to visit again, to which Seokheon promises he'll take her there as often as she wants. He wants her to feel happy and relaxed, regardless of any insecurities she may have about her scar. Yeonwoo wakes up alone in the car, and looks around to see she's parked at a nursery. Curious, she gets out and walks inside, where she unexpectedly meets Mr. Chang-soo. Surprised to see him there, she asks what he's doing. He responds with equal surprise and happiness, mentioning that Seokheon had called him to take care of some orchids specifically for Yeonwoo. He hadn't expected her to arrive so soon after the call. Seokheon walks in and asks Yeonwoo why she came with her leg. She explains she needed to use the bathroom. Mr. Chang-soo directs them to the restroom, where Seokheon carries Yeonwoo. She feels embarrassed about it inwardly. After they return from the restroom, Yeonwoo asks Mr. Chang-soo if she can take a look at his nursery. He agrees, and Seokheon carries her around to explore. She sees the Yeonwoo orchids and thinks to herself that her grandfather couldn't decide on a name, so he named them after his granddaughter. It was his dream to cultivate many orchids like these and distribute them in the market. Chang-soo tells Yeonwoo that Seokheon asked him to grow these moth orchids specifically for her wedding. He started growing the Yeonwoo orchids exclusively for this purpose since last September, so it's been a year now. As Changsa keeps talking to Yeonwoo, tears start rolling down her cheeks. She thinks to herself that she had believed everyone would forget about her grandpa and his flowers over time. She never imagined that someone would remember him, nurture his flowers, and even use those very flowers to celebrate her wedding. Right now, she feels incredibly loved. It's amazing to think that her love for her grandpa is being returned to her in such a huge and meaningful way. 3 weeks later, Seokheon and Yeonwoo are back home. Seokheon is working on the nursery in their house. Meanwhile, Yeonwoo sits down with grandfather Lee and tells him everything that happened with the flowers during their vacation. Grandfather Lee thinks to himself that while he may have failed to raise his son well, at least his grandson grew up to be a fine man with a supportive wife. He couldn't ask for anything more. Yeonwoo shows grandfather Lee pictures of their vacation to share how it went. Outside the house, there's a car parked with someone inside talking on the phone with Jonghae. He mentions that Yeonwoo has been staying indoors the entire time, making it difficult for them to act. Jonghae gets frustrated, questioning how he expects her to believe that. She asserts that Yeonwoo couldn't have stayed inside for 3 weeks straight, especially since she's in her last trimester, and should be going to the hospital regularly. After calling him Mr. Cheon, she tells him he's making things really tough for her right now. She warns that if he keeps making excuses, she'll withdraw her money. Mr. Cheon assures her that he'll have good news soon, asking her to calm down and wait a bit longer. After the call, Mr. Cheon gets angry, muttering curses about Jonghae. He's fed up with her demanding attitude and can't wait to finish her job and make her pay for everything she's caused. Just then, Yeonwoo steps out of the house and hops into a taxi. Mr. Cheon calls Jonghae and informs her that the target is now outside, so she should prepare herself. Inside the taxi, Yeonwoo texts Seokheon the plate number and thinks to herself that she's heading for her maternity photo shoot today. She didn't expect Seokheon to arrange it so quickly after her grandfather suggested it. She calls Seokheon and assures him she'll be fine getting there. He advises her to start her makeup once she arrives since the makeup artist is already waiting. Seokheon promises he'll join her soon and asks her to text him upon arrival before they hang up. Just then, Mr. Cheon's car crashes into their taxi. Yeonwoo quickly tells the taxi driver that she's okay. The driver asks her to wait, while he goes to talk to the other driver at the back. Yeonwoo wonders what's happening. Suddenly, Mr. Cheon, wearing a mask, opens her door from the other side and smirks at her along with his partner. At the photo shoot studio, Seokheon arrives with his grandfather. The employees there seem concerned. Seokheon asks about the scheduled session, and they inform him that Yeonwoo hasn't shown up yet. They tried calling her but her phone was off, so they were just about to contact him. Seokheon immediately calls Ms. Park to check into the situation, and grandfather Lee is curious about what's happening. Ms. Park tells Seokheon that there was an accident on the way to the studio. The driver planned to get Yeonwoo another taxi, but during the chaos caused by the accident, Yeonwoo disappeared. Seokheon is furious, accusing Jonghae of being behind this. Grandfather Lee suggests that if they want to fight dirty, they have to be even tougher. Grandfather and Seokheon, accompanied by bodyguards, forcefully enter Seokheon's father's apartment. They confront him, demanding to know Jonghae's whereabouts since she isn't home. His father claims they've been separated for years, questioning why he's being dragged into this over her. Seokheon berates his father, blaming him for bringing Jonghae into their lives. His father responds with insults, causing tensions to escalate. Distraught, he pleads with grandfather Lee, apologizing and explaining that he paid alimony to Jonghae, who then left him. Grandfather Lee issues a stern threat, warning him not to lie again. He keeps pleading and crying, and grandfather Lee threatens to hit him, prompting him to reveal that Jonghae is at Incheon port. He instructs his father to get rid of the cleaver and confesses that he had hidden a voice recorder in her room, overhearing everything. Grandfather Lee criticizes him for knowing about Jonggae's actions yet choosing to ignore them. He orders one of his men to handle him, ensuring he ends up in the hospital and won't cause trouble again. At Incheon port, Jonggae declares that Yeonwoo shouldn't have crossed her. Suddenly, Mr. Cheon and his partner appear, grabbing Jonggae. She protests, asking why they are turning on her after she paid them. Just then, Seokheon enters, announcing that he's found her. Jonggae is surprised they found her so quickly. Seokheon demands to know where Yeonwoo is. She says she'll tell him if he gets the guys to let go of her. He signals them to release her, and she mocks him, calling him stupid. She reaches for her phone and calls someone, instructing them to burn Yeonwoo, then tosses her phone aside. Seokheon quickly picks it up. Jonggae laughs, saying he brought this upon himself. Seokheon thinks to himself that he needs to hurry and find out who Jonggae was talking to and get to Yeonwoo. Seokheon demands Jonggae give him the number of the person she was on the phone with. She taunts him, asking what she would gain by telling him. He begs her to please tell him. Just then, 2 messages come in on the phone, revealing they are at the burial site and sending a picture of Yeonwoo. Seokheon, furious, grabs Jonggae and lifts her up, demanding the numbers. She smirks and says he should kneel before her and beg, calling her mother and asking for forgiveness. Desperate, Seokheon kneels down, crying and begging her. He calls her mother and continues pleading. Jonggae pats his head, saying that if he had just been a good son from the start, none of this would have happened. Jonggae mocks Seokheon, asking how he feels. She tells him that's how she felt the day she sent her daughter to be cremated. As she laughs, Seokheon continues begging her, calling her mother. She then admits she doesn't know the number either and laughs, blaming Grandfather Lee for everything. She says if he had just given her some shares of Miri Construction, things would be different. Just then, one of the men informs Seokheon that they've found Yeonwoo's location. Jonggae staggers, saying it's impossible they've found Yeonwoo. She rushes to Grandfather Lee, but he pushes her away, saying she's beyond saving now. He instructs his bodyguard to turn her over to the police. In the car, the driver informs Seokheon that Yeonwoo was taken to Pocheon. He's already sent some team members ahead and asked the police for backup. They are searching for her as they speak. They finally arrive at the place, and Seokheon sees that it's all burnt up. He falls to the ground, crying. He remembers when they talked about the photo shoot. He thinks to himself that because of those pictures, Yeonwoo left the house and ended up like this. If he had known things would turn out this way, he would have just listened to her and scrapped the idea. He would have told her to forget the pictures so they could stay home together. He should have told her he loved her just one more time and thanked her. He should have spent more time talking to Hope as his father. As he continues crying and digging, his guard tries to hold him back, but he manages to rush in further. He keeps crying, asking where Yeonwoo is, blaming himself. He says it's all his fault. They had finally begun to completely accept each other. He thought he'd finally figured out how to properly love Yeonwoo. They were supposed to grow those orchids together, and had planned to go to the beach. He blames himself, thinking if he hadn't fallen in love with Yeonwoo, if he had just let her go when she asked to live a normal life, or at the very least, if he had let her go when she claimed Hope wasn't his son, things would be different. No matter how hard he thinks about it, Yeonwoo's fate feels like it's all his fault. If he hadn't been so greedy to have her, she wouldn't have met such a painful end. She must have been so hurt. He says he wants to go with her. He needs to be there to protect Yeonwoo and Hope so they can reach heaven without any trouble. He swore to protect them, so even if it means dying, he'll see that promise through to the end. As he tries to take his own life, Grandfather Lee tells his bodyguards to stop him. Just then, Seokheon's phone rings. He quickly picks up and sees it's Yeonwoo. She tells him that she thinks the baby is coming and she's getting contractions, but she's all alone. She pleads with him to hurry. A few hours ago, Mr. Seokheon and his partner had set the place on fire and then left. Yeonwoo, tied up inside, knew Hope's life depended on her. She needed to free her hands first. She whispered to her mom and God to watch over her and help her. After freeing her hands, Yeonwoo wonders how she can escape without the men noticing. She decides to run out through the back door. As she continues running, her water breaks. She spots an empty house and realizes she needs to get help somehow. Finding a telephone inside, she praises God that it works. Now that she's able to relax a bit, she really feels the pain. That's when she calls Seokheon for help. Seokheon tells her to breathe and asks how far apart her contractions are. She says they are 5 minutes apart. He tells her they've pinpointed her location and he's on his way. Yeonwoo urges him to hurry. Inwardly, she trusts that he'll keep his word, he wouldn't ever break a promise. Seokheon arrives quickly and thanks Yeonwoo for holding on and staying safe. At the hospital, after a few hours, Yeonwoo gives birth to Hope. Seokheon asks about her condition, and the doctor informs him that he can see her in about an hour. The doctor mentions that Yeonwoo seemed happy after seeing her baby and even thanked the medical team. Inwardly, Seokheon feels that Yeonwoo is stronger than he could ever be, she's always been stronger than him. He feels deeply sorry. The doctor takes Hope for a newborn screening, and Grandfather Lee advises Seokheon to compose himself, noting that Yeonwoo is the one showing real strength. An hour later, Seokheon enters to see Yeonwoo holding Hope. He suggests she give the baby to him so she can rest, but Yeonwoo insists that Hope isn't heavy. Seokheon notices her hand is bandaged, and Yeonwoo asks if he thinks their little Siwoo might feel embarrassed later about her scar. Seokheon jokes that if Siwoo does, he'll deal with it. Seokheon hands Yeonwoo the baby formula, and she feeds Siwoo. They notice he eats a lot. Musin comments that Siwoo looks just like Seokheon. Seokheon jokes that he's sure he looked better than him when he was a baby. After Siwoo finishes his food, Seokheon picks him up and says he'll grow up to be a good son, because he knows how much his daddy loves him. Yeonwoo adds that Musin said sons are only good to their parents until they turn 7. He tells Yeonwoo to go do what she needs to do, assuring her he'll take care of Siwoo. As she leaves, Musin and the other maid express concern about Yeonwoo having to pump breast milk. They mention how mothers always want to give their best to their babies, even though they've heard that using breast pumps can be painful. Seokheon wonders to himself if she really has to use one. In the bathroom, as Yeonwoo is getting ready to pump, Seokheon walks in. He tells her he's found another way to help and kisses her chest, which she says feels good. Days later at home, later at night, Seokheon takes Siwoo from Yeonwoo so she can sleep. Musin tells him he needs to rest for work the next day, but he insists Yeonwoo can't sleep if Siwoo is crying. He asks her to warm some milk. Siwoo has already reached 7 kilograms, and Yeonwoo has healed enough from her burns to start breastfeeding. After Seokheon feeds Siwoo, he rocks him to sleep. From the living room, Grandfather Lee sees Seokheon and smiles. Weeks later, Grandfather Lee brings orchids for Yeonwoo, who is deeply grateful and happy. She thinks to herself that her grandfather left her these Yeonwoo orchids as his final wish. She is on the path to happiness, just as he wanted. She knows she will love and be loved, living happily for a long time to come. And we've come to the end of this manhwa recap. If you enjoyed it and want to see more stories like this, please make sure you drop a comment. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated. Until next time, ciao.